Hello, everyone. If you're here right now, if you're listening in, then just give us 5 minutes. We'll be starting shortly. It's going to start in about 5 minutes' time. So just grab yourself a cup of tea, grab yourself a drink or something, and then we'll dive into the webinar in just about 5 minutes' time, on 2 o'clock Eastern time on the dot. So go ahead and grab something if you need to get yourself comfortable. Get a cup of tea, cup of drink or something like that. And I'll have my water right here. And we'll get started shortly. So hello, everyone. And just letting you know that we'll be starting in about 4 minutes. So there's a good time for you to grab a drink, a cup of tea or something like that if you've just joined us. And we'll be starting at 2 p.m. Eastern time on the dot. So just a few more minutes there. Right. In the meantime, if I can see where the messages are. Yeah. In the meantime, feel free to start typing messages saying hello. I'm going to see if I can find where the message section is. I think it'll be just showing up here. Okay, so we've got quite a number of people joining us. So welcome, everyone. Hello. Just a reminder for those of you who just joined us, we'll be starting formally in about 3 minutes' time. So feel free to make yourself comfortable right now. Grab yourself a drink or something. And then at 2 p.m. Eastern time, which is in about 2 or 3 minutes' time, we'll start the call formally. So for now, just go ahead and make yourself comfortable. And we'll get started very, very soon. All right. I hope you guys are excited. I think it's going to be a fun day. And there will be a chance, before we get started, there will be a chance to ask questions throughout this. So if you don't mind typing them in, if you already have some questions before we start, feel free to go ahead and type them in. You should have a chat box here somewhere. I'm trying to figure out where my chat box is. I think it just pops up once you guys send me a message. And then I'll use that as the Q&A session at the end so that I can answer any questions you might have as we go along. In the meantime, the actual seminar webinar will start just about 2 minutes from now, 2 o'clock Eastern time. And so everyone's got time to collect. So we've got still a few people gathering in. So this way we've got everyone here at the same time. So let's do that shortly. I think we'll be almost there. Let me just... All right, folks, I am very sorry. I had a... here we go, I'm back again. Sorry, folks, if I disappeared for a second there, I had a slight glitch. I think I pushed the wrong button trying to figure out where the chat box is where your questions will come up. And that just kicked me out for a second. So just about a minute left. And any minute now we'll get started. So make yourself comfortable, sit yourself down, grab a drink. And then we'll go right into the webinar in just a few moments' time. All right, we're almost there. So we have a nice big group here gathering. I think we're almost there. So I'll tell you what, we have about 30 seconds or so, and I think we'll be pretty much ready to go. So thank you, everyone who just turned up a bit early, for your patience. Everyone who's just joining us, welcome. And I think it's about time to get started. So let's dive in here formally. First of all, everyone, welcome. Thank you very much for coming here, taking time out on a Sunday, especially I think it's a Super Bowl Sunday in the US. So thank you all for taking some time out for this. What I want to do today is walk through the keys on a path to mastery. And these keys actually, by the way, I think are true of any industry, but it's especially true of hypnosis. I really modeled myself a lot on Milton Erickson and the people that Milton Erickson trained directly. And it's some really good hypnosis that's going on there. And I've always been inspired to try and emulate the great man himself as much as possible. And I'd like to share with you the things I've done for myself, things I've learned along the ways that could have helped me in the early days had I known more about this. It will hopefully help you as well. So the first of the keys, let's just dive right into them. The first of the keys is inspiration, a great inspiration. What do I mean by this? I think without inspiration, you don't really have anything. If you kind of just, it'll be all right to just try it, just see what happens. Sure, there's good things that can come from that. You can still learn skills that way. But until you're inspired, you're not going to be willing to do the kind of work, the kind of immersion it takes to get really good. And there's something special that happens when you're inspired. Inspiration really manages belief. When you're inspired, then your mind suddenly starts digging deep into resources you didn't even know you had yourself. And I think that's when implicit learning really takes place. I'd like to give you a concrete example of this, if I may, just to make it bring it to life. So a story that I really was moved by is the story of Andrew Jones in Curacao. So for those of you who don't know, Curacao is a tiny little island just off the coast of South America, I believe, although it could be in the Caribbean. And they are an incredibly, although it's a very small country, I think it's only got a couple of 100,000 people living there. They're incredibly talented baseball players. So much so that the US baseball leagues have a really large number of Curaçaoan players in it. Now, how does all this happen? Many years ago, a local boy called Andrew Jones was drafted into the American Baseball League. And there was a big famous match. It's almost like a Hollywood movie where it all came down to the wire. And this little boy turns up and it's really on his shoulders whether to win or lose the match. And the entire island, which is a little bit obsessed with baseball, looked at this match and watched Andrew Jones knock it out of the park and basically win. Everyone went nuts. Everyone went wild. And suddenly the island got galvanized. People just wanted to play more baseball. They practiced harder. And if you think about it this way, Andrew Jones was someone that was their peers. There were people there on the island who had trained with him. Some even had beaten him. And here he is in a major baseball game playing the winning round, if you will. That has a huge impact on all the islanders. They suddenly believed in their ability to take part in this major league, this highly professional league, because one of their own had done it. It's not just one of their own, but someone just like them. They lived next to him. They talked with him. They go to school with his brothers. That is a lot of things for the mind. If you recall back at the turn of the last century, Roger Bannister is famous for breaking the barrier of the 4-minute mile. Until then, people thought no human being can run faster than 1 mile in 4 minutes. 4 minutes is the absolute maximum. Well, he trained really hard in a particularly unique way to beat that. The best part, though, is not that he managed to do the impossible. The best part is what followed right afterwards. Once one person managed it, once one person did what everyone thought was impossible, once Roger Bannister had run the mile in, I think, 3 minutes and 59 seconds, something like that, just on the cusp of the 4 minute, it's like all the barriers that blocked us disappeared. Since then, many people have beaten the 4 minute mile, including ambitious amateurs. Now think about this. The world's most elite athletes could not beat the 4 minute mile. But then once Roger Bannister did, and people started believing, then amateur athletes started routinely beating the 4 minute mile. How does this work? Some switch gets triggered in our minds that elevates our game to really amazing proportions. And I think inspiration is what does that. It tells us that we can do it, but not just that we can do it, but we can do it. It's not possible just for humanity in general, but maybe I, as an individual, can do that too. You've got to be inspired, and you've got to find some kind of connection point to the people that that you are inspired by. So what is it for me in hypnosis? Of course, Erickson was the inspiration for me. His stories, the amazing things he did with people, the amazing trances that people experienced with him, I found it incredibly inspiring. Then, of course, I made it my business to meet people that had trained with him. And I started forming the belief, well, you know what? If they can do it, well, I can do it too. So I redoubled my efforts and really trained even harder to raise myself up through the ranks. One of the things that really helped me in terms of this inspiration is it's really important to have a clear goal of what it is you want to achieve. So for me in particular, I think the idea of having a ridiculously large goal, Ericsson has left very, very large shoes to fill. And instead of then telling myself all the reasons why I can't do it, I started finding out all the things that I could do. In other words, I play with some of the language. Yes, I can do that. I can create the sort of intensity that Ericsson had. Yes, I can do that. I can start to emulate some of his experiences. I can do that too. So as soon as I started labeling little goals on the way that I can do, but within the bigger goal of being like Ericsson, and most importantly, being inspired by that, having the emotional content that goes with that, that's when suddenly things started turning around for me. I went from focusing on my insecurities, focusing on my mistakes, focusing on all the things I couldn't do with hypnosis. I flipped that around to focusing on the things I could do with hypnosis. Comparing my successes to Ericsson's successes, trying to emulate other successes. I read something that Ericsson did, and I thought, how would I do that? How could I do something like that? How could I achieve something very similar? So having a large goal is something so massive that it almost scares you. It's going to be moving you in a direction that is inspiring, that excites you. That's the foundation point. When you have that, well, then all the other keys start to make sense. But if you don't have something that inspires you personally, well, then it's very hard to engage the other parts of the mind that need to be engaged in order to reach some great or high level in any field, especially in hypnosis. Now, this doesn't mean you can't be a good hypnotist without inspiration. There's some very competent hypnotists out there. But the ones that I've noticed are the best, the ones that I've tried to follow, the ones that I've learned the most from, all of them, without exception, have been inspired by someone or something in hypnosis to go to extreme lengths, shall we say, extreme heights in their skill sets. And the key here is you are the key. It's inside of you. You'll know, because if you're inspired, well, you know you're inspired. If you're not inspired, then start looking around for other ways to get inspired, to get that excitement going. So that's your first key, great inspiration. Inspiration on its own, though, doesn't do the whole job. Why? Well, you could be all fired up. You know, there's an old saying, he's all dressed up and has nowhere to go. Being fired up is a good thing. It gets you ready to do work. It gets you ready to explore. It gets you ready to recover from mistakes, to shrug them off because they're unimportant. The bigger goal is there. But then you also need to have great information. You've got to know what you're doing is going to get you there, right? You could ask yourself questions, things like, what do the most successful people in this field do? If you know what successful people have done to become successful, then the chances are very high that if you emulate their actions, you too will join the same ranks. I think this is Aristotle came up with a saying that success is a habit, right? Ethics is a mindset, is a set of habits. The more you do certain things, the more you habituate certain actions, those actions will determine whatever successes you have. If we look at our lives right now, your life, my life, everyone's life, 90% of what we have in our lives right now is as a result of the habits we've been running for the last 5, 10, 20 years, right? If you want to change what we have right now, you need to change habits. But what do we change the habits to? Well, that's what great information is all about. Great information tells you what you need to do in order to succeed. So there's a couple of number of steps, you would say, to great information, or at least there's a couple of points that I look for in information to let me know whether or not this information is worth following, or whether I have to sideline it because it might be interesting, but it's not going to get me to where I want to go, at least not that I can see at this point. So the first test that I have is, are the ideas clear and are they simple? Why do I need them to be clear and simple? Well, if they're complex ideas, then first of all, I may not understand them. If I don't understand them, they mean nothing to me. If I can't do it, if I can't do something with them, then the ideas may be the most amazing ideas in the world, but they mean nothing to me. So the ideas could be clear. And simple is because I've got to be able to grasp them, especially when I'm new in a field. If I don't grasp an idea, then once again, I can't do much with it. So instead of complicating ideas, we need to simplify them down to the absolute basics, the principles that make everything work. That actually takes me to the second point. There are two essential ways that we can learn something. There's a technique-based approach, and there's a principle-based approach. So a technique-based approach is you basically, well, you learn a technique, and then you learn to does this, and you turn a technique to that does, and then you learn a technique that does the other. And that has limitations, because every time you encounter a new problem, if the technique you have doesn't resolve that problem, then you're stuck. You've got to wait for a new technique to come along that fixes that exact situation. But if you're working at the level of principles, if your information teaches you the principles behind the techniques, you have the freedom to create. You create new solutions, you create new techniques, new ideas, new ways of doing things that can meet the unique situation that is in front of you. So if you are technique driven, or if you have information that's just full of techniques, the techniques themselves, they're not a problem. In fact, they're very useful because it gives some practical experiences too, of course. But the next thing I want to do when I see a technique is I always ask myself, what are the principles being expressed by this? Because once I can draw the principles out of a technique, then it simplifies the technique in my understanding. So it goes back to the simple ideas. And I create a lot more clarity about what I'm trying to do. I'm not just doing the steps for the sake of doing the steps. I'm doing the steps because it actually means something. Now, as a quick story to illustrate this, way back when I was a student, and I first started in hypnosis. So I would have been 20 or something like that. I had a girlfriend, now a long-term ex-girlfriend, and you'll see why in a moment. Because I read about a technique, the fast phobia cure, in fact, where you basically have someone remember the problem and then just go through the memory over and over again until it sort of dissolves. Now, I completely missed the technique, the essential quality of the technique, which is the idea of whiting out or blanking out the troublesome spot in the memory, and of rewinding, undoing the memory with comedic content, so that the associations wouldn't be as traumatic anymore. I just thought that if you keep replaying the same memory over and over again, then the trauma disappears. That's what I took from that. Very bad information, by the way. And here's why. A few months in to this relationship, my girlfriend at the time had gone home for the weekend, and there was an accident. Her mother had fallen down the stairs. She was fine, but for a moment, she'd seen her mother lying at the bottom of the stairs, having heard this huge, loud noise. And she was terrified that she had broken her neck. So with all good intentions, but with terrible, terrible timing, I asked her to basically keep repeating that memory over and over and over again, thinking that eventually would help her relieve it. All it did is traumatize the poor girl even further. Now you can see why this was an ex-girlfriend a long time ago now. I messed up. I didn't understand the technique because it wasn't clear, it wasn't simple to me. And most important of all, I didn't get the principle that was made up of. So information is great when it's clear, it's simple, and you can see the principles behind this. The next thing that makes information great is you've got to be able to connect to it. You've got to have some kind of experience of it. Now, what I mean by this is it can't be academic. It can't be. So here's something I call the academic dilemma. An academic dilemma is when you know so much about a thing that you can't actually do it. So when academics study something, they can tell you all about why someone's doing it and how it works. But all that knowledge gets in the way because it's intellectual knowledge. It's not visceral knowledge. It's not in their bones, so to speak. They haven't done it. And so when they're asked to do it, the standard they know is possible, and the standard they're actually at is so far apart, it creates cognitive dissonance. It's painful to try and do the thing because you can't do it anywhere near as good as you think it should be. So abstract knowledge is no good until you convert it into an actual experience. It's got to be experiential knowledge. And I can't emphasize enough, in hypnosis, experiences trumps information or abstract ideas every single time. You can read 1,000 books on hypnosis. You can watch 10,000 hours of hypnosis. But until you start practicing it, until you start doing the induction, saying it out loud, watching a person and getting it wrong, and then learning from that, and then slowly getting it right and more right as you go along, none of it makes any sense. It means very little. Now, the good news is if you have spent the last few years just reading and just being curious about this and being stimulated by the books you've read and the videos you've seen and so on, but haven't had the courage to do anything about this yet, all that work is not lost. It's actually still there. It's in the back of your mind somewhere. It just needs activation. Activation comes through experience, through putting yourself in a context where you could actually do something so the knowledge that's in your head can actually be expressed in your voice, in your words, in your body, in your behaviors. So clear, simple ideas, principles-based, and it's got to be connected to you through a personal experience, something that you've done, or something you're doing. The next idea that makes information great is it's got to be stimulating. It's got to be interesting. Your mind's got to be engaged by it. I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination to think back on our school days. There are some great teachers that stimulated us, and we loved the subject. There are some terrible teachers that bored the hell out of us, and we hated such a subject, might still hate it today because of how unpleasant it was back then. So information has to be packaged in a way that's not only accessible, but it's stimulating, it's interesting. And I think pretty much any field can be made interesting, especially hypnosis, which I think is so interesting from the get-go, that I think you have to work very hard in order to turn hypnosis into something that is not interesting in any way. Okay, so we've talked about the clarity, we talked about the principles, we talked about having experiences and making it interesting. There's one final thing that is worth looking out for when you get into information, especially about hypnosis, that makes that information great and helps you on the path to greatness yourself. And that is, does the information you get stimulate further questions from you? But most importantly, better questions. It's not just asking more questions that counts, it's asking better questions. When a novice starts in a field, they don't really know what questions to ask. It's all new to them. And it's very difficult to tell the difference between what's good information, what's bad information, and so on. But the more experience we get, the more we can ask more pointed questions, better questions that get us better answers, that move us further down the path that we're interested in. So, when you're learning something new, the information you get your hands onto should not only give you answers, that's very useful, but it should also train your mind in recognizing what you don't know in a better way, so you can start formulating better questions, and that in turn loops right back in again and sends you off on a search for answers to those better questions. And you'll know you've got good answers to those questions, because not only will you have answers to that question, but you'll have even better questions now to go exploring even further. And this is what gives you longevity in the field. And this is what elevates you from mere competence into absolute excellence, because you're constantly asking better questions, which drive you to find better and better answers. So that's the second key. So great inspiration is the first key. Great information is the second key. The third key is really been alluded to by this drive for better questions and finding better answer. The drive itself is the key, which basically means great motivation. Why do we want motivation? Well, without motivation, we don't really do anything. Motivation gives us the ability to keep going. Motivation helps us stick to something. Motivation helps us to do all kinds of things. If you do something casually, then you'll get a casual outcome. That's why we call some things amateurs. They do things casually. A professional sits down and actually does the thing with full attention, with full intent, learns deeply. And that takes effort, that takes energy, that takes a little bit of discipline. It takes building good habits. That means we need to have enough motivation, enough fire in our belly to do that. Let's imagine that you want to become physically very strong. Well, to get physically very strong, there's no shortcut. You've got to do work. You've got to do push-ups. You've got to lift weights. You've got to do whatever strong men in the past have done to become strong yourself. But it's not easy. People want to give up. That's why not everyone is physically that strong. And in hypnosis, why everyone isn't great, because they haven't put the effort in, the work in, to get to that place. So the motivation that you draw is the thing that keeps you going. So the question you got to ask yourself is, what keeps me going when things get rough? When I fall down and get hurt, when I make a mistake and it's unpleasant, how do I get up again? How do I stick to it? When it's Tuesday night and I'm tired, but I haven't finished my my piece of work yet, what gets me back to my desk to finish doing that? That's what we're looking for. Now, there's a couple of cheats that you can help with this. How can you develop that kind of great motivation? My first cheat, and this is a really useful, and this has helped me so many times, is having a community, a supportive community around you that catch you when you fall. Everyone will fall. everyone will fail. Everyone will make mistakes. Everyone will lose their mojo. Everyone will get discouraged. I've been there. In fact, I've almost walked away from hypnosis probably half a dozen times by this stage. But I've had good people in my life, people I liked, people I trusted, people who I admired. And when I was at a low point, they caught me. They helped get me back on my feet. They encouraged me to keep going just a little bit further until I could reignite that spark of enthusiasm. I could reignite my own motivation and keep going on my own. So having a healthy community around you is really, really useful. And having people that support you around you is really, really useful. It's helpful when life gets tough, and everyone's life gets tough from time to time. Another thing that really helps is having a purpose. Why are you doing this? Now, I'd like to contrast two kind of purposes. There's an extrinsic purpose and an intrinsic purpose. So the easiest way of describing that is comparing having a higher purpose, like almost a calling, to your purpose being something a little more basic, like money. When people only go after money, it's an external thing. People don't really want money. What they really want is what they think money will do for them. Of course, it's already a dissociated purpose in many ways. And there are many, many studies, especially in the workplace, that show that money is only a temporary fix to a problem. In other words, when people's morale is lower in an office and you give them a pay rise, you can expect that for the next couple of weeks, a couple of months, morale will rise. People will feel much better, much more motivated, and work better again. But then something interesting happens. Then they habituate to that level of income, and the motivation evaporates again. In other words, they end up being in the exact same boat as they were in before they got the pay rise, and well, nothing has changed. Compare that to having a higher purpose, a true calling, something that really floats your boat, something that really excites you, something makes you think, oh my gosh, I would do this for free if I could afford doing this. That's a higher purpose. For each person, it'll be different. Some people, it'll be wanting to help others. For other people, it's developing the field further. For other people still, it may be a personal thing, a personal, to fix something within themselves. The point is, the motivation stays burning when it's something that truly matters to you. And money, although important and should be in your motivational arsenal, should not be the thing. It cannot be the number one value that drives you, because it ends up running out of steam. We mentioned the idea of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. It comes in other forms too. Remember, extrinsic motivation is motivation that comes from outside of you. For example, few people like taking exams. What they take exams for is because they want the certificate, the recognition the exams gives them. They want what the certificate, what doors that opens for them. So when society tells you to do something, when you have to jump through certain hoops to get something, when you need to do certain things to get cash, when you're doing certain things because it's your job, these are all external motivators. And whilst they can work, and they're absolutely worth using to work, you can't truly reach a sense of greatness unless you have an internal motivation too. The thing itself must be interesting. So how do we compare this? Well, let's compare the attitude most people have to their day jobs to the way most people think about their hobbies. I say most people because you may well be a person who loves their job, in which case it's intrinsically motivating. And if that's the case, well done. That's actually an amazing thing to have found. So hobbies tend to be intrinsically motivating. Why? Because we don't get anything out of the hobby other than, well, what we get out of the hobby. We don't get paid for the hobby. In fact, most of the time, we have to spend money on the hobby. Let's take someone who likes football at an amateur level. They may be in an amateur league or hockey or any kind of sport. That costs money. You've got to pay insurance, you've got to pay membership dues, you've got to buy equipment, and it takes effort. You've got to go to games, you've got to go to practice sessions, you've got to meet with people. If that game isn't inspiring to you, why on earth would you spend all that money? Motivation will dwindle and eventually you'll move on. The only thing that keeps you doing things when it's externally motivating is because you really need them. For example, in our society, cash is very important. Money is very important. It's hard to live without it. So it keeps us going back to a job we may not like because we like the results of that job, the income. But the hobbies are more powerful. Hobbies have much more of a sense of greatness to them than our jobs do, unless we end up really loving those jobs. Again, if you want to hit the peak of a particular profession, and hypnosis in particular, there's something within hypnosis that you must learn to love. You just love the idea of it. And that could be the idea of helping people. It could be the fascination with the different language patterns and really mastering those. Something within it, though, has to float your boat. And take time to think about that and remind yourself about that from time to time so you can keep going even when times get tough on you. So in terms of motivation, we need motivation in order to keep going and to stick to something rather than get distracted by other things. It helps to have a community around you that supports you, that helps us to rekindle our motivation if we lose it. It's important to have a higher purpose in the field. Money can't be that purpose, because we need to be intrinsically motivated. We need to have the thing itself, hypnosis itself, be something that excites us and motivates us to keep going, rather than the things we think hypnosis will get us: status, money, careers, or so on. We've got to love the thing itself. The final cue, the final element that kind of fits into this key of great motivation, we alluded to it already when we talked about the community, which is it really helps if you have a healthy environment in which to do the work, right? We'll explore the idea of an environment later on. It's actually one of the keys we'll come on to in a second. But before we do that, I'd like to talk about the fourth key first. So what's the fourth key here? Simplest way, I mean, we've kind of alluded to, these are all kind of intertwined in many ways. We've alluded to this when we talk about great information, which is you've got to be able to convert the information to an experience. What do we call converting something we know about into something we've experienced ourselves? Well, typically that's called practice. So great practice creates great practitioners. If you want to master hypnosis, well, you got to practice all the aspects of it and keep doing it. So what are the secrets to being able to practice well, to be able to grow well within that? The first secret is you've got to match the challenge level of whatever you're trying to do to the skill level that you have. What this does is it creates something called flow. Flow is an amazing learning tool. Flow feels really good. As the name implies, it feels like you're just in flow. Everything's easy. It takes care of itself. It just happens. Think of anything that you are A, good at, and B, enjoy doing. You'll notice that whilst you're engaged with that, time disappears, your sense of self disappears, the task just feels good, you feel motivated, you're enjoying yourself. And that's the place you want to come from when practicing, or it's really the place you want to reach when you're practicing. To get there is really, really simple. Let's assume you have the motivation already. There is a bandwidth. If you imagine a graph, right? Over here, we have your level of skill, and over here, we have the level of challenge. Now, if your level of skill is low, but the level of challenge is high, then you get stressed. It's too much. Let's think of a video game, for example. If you've ever played a video game that was really difficult, you probably got frustrated and gave up and moved on. It's true of basically any task. If your skill level is low, but the difficulty is high, then very few people will stick at it long enough to improve their skills. But the opposite is also true. If your skill level is over here, it's very high level of skill, but the difficulty, the challenge is very low, then you have another problem. This one's called boredom. In other words, you are so much better at doing this thing than what you need to do here. So you get bored. And boredom also shuts your brain down. It doesn't grow very much. If you keep doing things in the boredom zone, not only does it damage your motivation, you're not growing. You're not going anywhere. So we have really 4 zones that we're interested in. The boredom zone is when you have more skill than challenge. The solution here is increase your challenge, right? Then we have the comfort zone, where your skill and challenge levels meet. And that's actually a pretty good place to be in. But the risk of being there is your progress tends to be relatively slow because, well, you're in your comfort zone. Then we'll skip the next one for a second. I'll come back in a second. Then the final one, of course, is the stress response. If your skill is low, but the challenge is very high, you get frustrated, you get stressed, you get angry. And again, that shuts learning down. The sweet spot is this extra one, the one where the skill levels and the challenge levels match or actually slightly out of phase. In other words, your skill level is just below or just on the cusp of the challenge levels. If you get that just right, then it's very motivating to reach a little bit higher. in practice, what happens is people oscillate between the two, between the comfort zone and the challenge zone. They keep kind of bouncing in between the two. And that's really where the sweet spot lies. Because if you stay in the challenge zones too high, you eventually slip up over the top and get into stress. If you stay in the comfort zone for too long, your skill levels gradually rise, which means you pop out of your comfort zone without realizing into boredom. So somewhere between comfort and challenge is the sweet spot where learning happens the best. So you need to map out your hypnosis journey. So the challenges you're facing are within your grasp, but require a bit of effort to get there. So that way you're in that comfort challenge bandwidth, if you will. And that's where the best things will tend to happen. So that's one of the secrets to great practice. Now, the next secret to great practice, assuming you got the challenge levels right, it's kind of implied by the idea of challenge, which means you need to have the right sequence with your practice in order to build skill progressively. So what do I mean by this? Let's say your challenge zone is right here and your skill level is just underneath it, so you're doing well. What's the point of having a challenge zone if not so that your skill is challenged to increase? So as you keep meeting that challenge, over time, your skills increase and eventually you'll match the challenge. Maybe you even are better than the challenge. At this point, learning stops and you start entering the boredom zone, of course, right? So what do? We've got to up the challenge again. So we keep growing. And at this point, we up it again. We keep growing and we keep growing and so on. Hopefully you see what I'm trying to say here. So the finding the right level of challenge is a dynamic process. The level of challenge will change as your skill level changes. So then you need to have the right sequence so you can practice progressively more difficult things so that you can continue to grow and have somewhere to go. So if the right level of challenge is about flow, the right sequence is about having a ladder worth climbing. That's the ladder to greatness, if you will. The next element in this key, great practice, is volume. You gotta be able to practice to internalize it. Really, the secret here is persistence. You gotta be persistent enough to keep doing it and doing it and doing it until you get it. So as an example, let's take two kids at school learning math, right? Both of them get a math problem that's just in their challenge zone. So they're just underneath it. So A and B, let's talk about A and B. Let's say A just does the bare minimum of work to do their homework, they hand it in, and then they leave it, right? So now their skill improves a little bit, but they notice that they haven't quite reached the challenge level yet. They're just beneath that level still. But now the challenge has gone up because the next piece of homework is going to be a little bit harder. And now they try that. Now it's a little more stressful because now it's already the beginning of the stress zone. So do that bit of homework. So they rise a little bit, but they're still not quite there yet. And then the challenge goes up even further. Now they're even further away. Now the stress is even higher. So they progress even slower because remember, stress retards learning. So the challenge keeps rising out of their control and their learning is slowing down because they're getting more and more stressed. That gap widens and eventually they decide that they're no good at this. They give up. The inspiration is crushed. The motivation is crushed. And then, well, there's nowhere to go with that, right? What does student B do instead? So again, starts at the same place. Student B doesn't just do the homework. He keeps working at it. He keeps doing what it needs to be done until his skill makes this an easy task. In fact, not just meet the task, it's a little bit more than that task. It's now become easy. It's become enjoyable as a result. So now his skill level is above the task. He's starting to get at the risk of being bored. But if he's got a good teacher, the teacher just ups the ante again, and the whole process starts again. He's now going to do the homework, but he's going to practice his own stuff as well until it's even higher. So now this student B, is learning a very virtuous skill set. He's creating the habit of doing the work that gets him the results. What does he need? Volume. He needs a lot of experience. The rule of thumb is, the more novice you are, the more unskilled you are, the higher, the more important volume is, the more practice you need. It doesn't matter how good you are. In other words, how good that practice is. Simple practice, in other words, doing something at a low level, but often is better at the beginning than trying doing something a little bit more complex, but just a few times. So just random, lots and lots of practice at the start. And then as your skill levels increase, then you start becoming more and more challenging with your demands on your skills so that volume gets balanced out by quality of practice. So persistence is the key. The more you do it, the better you get at it. All right. Here's another key to practicing. This is a big one. And I've seen otherwise really talented people run into problems with this one. You need to have the right mindset during practice in order to progress. What do I mean by this? Well, let's go back to the idea of the flow states. Remember, skill and challenge. As your skill increases, the challenge has to increase, otherwise you fall into the boredom zone. Well, what is that doing? The brain grows under certain conditions. Pleasant emotions help the brain grow more quickly. In other words, you form memories more quickly, you learn more quickly when you have positive emotions. When you have a small amount of stress, that also happens. A small amount of stress is a stimulant for the brain, and it'll grow. You'll form memories more easily, you'll learn things more easily, you'll understand things more easily under a small amount of stress. Let me emphasize the word small here. The larger the stress becomes, the more learning gets inhibited. Negative emotions, as a rule, inhibit learning. In other words, they make you less likely to remember and make it more difficult to learn something. It doesn't mean that learning gets entirely halted. It's just it gets retarded, so that if you had no stress at all, your learning would actually be faster than we've added more stress to it. So we have our three formulas. We have positive emotion, which includes a low level of stress. We have neutral emotions, which basically is the default. And we have negative emotions, which includes high level of stress. This group here, high levels of stress and negative emotions, they retard your learning, slow you down. This group, that's the natural normal learning speed. But this group, the positive group, the positive emotions, the low levels of stress, enhances learning. You will learn and remember things faster. Your mindset is crucial for this. Now, what's a good mindset? Well, the first mindset is, especially as a novice, is patience, right? People always try to imagine themselves being better than they really are, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It can be very, very motivating. But if you get impatient with yourself, if you start beating yourself up for not being good enough, well, where on the spectrum do you lie? You're going to start going more and more towards negative emotions. An interesting study I saw shows that people who overestimate the level of skill progress faster than people who underestimate. So people who think that they're not as good as they really are, they progress very slowly. People who are a little bit better than they think they really are progress most quickly. And the people in the middle, the ones who have the exact accurate analysis of how good they have the middling level of progress. So actually, if your mindset is slightly self-delusional, where you're slightly telling yourself or believing that you're slightly better than you really are, well, that actually helps you to grow. If you get too much of that, of course, it creates other problems. But what does this do for you? It gives you patience to come back and do the task again and again and again. That repetition is so important. You need focus for that. You need to be able to keep your attention on the task, not let your mind wander. You need to be able to pay attention to details, not general things. The higher up the skill ladder you progress, the more details matter. The lower in the skill ladder you are, the more just sheer volume of experiences matter. What's another part of the mindset? Your emotional intelligence is part of that mindset. What I mean by that, how you treat yourself, especially how you think about yourself. What happens when you make a mistake? You tell yourself you're not good enough, you'll never get this, or are you gentle with yourself and say, you know what, you gave it a good go, let's do it again until we get it right. You see, if most people treated their friends the way they treat themselves, they wouldn't have any friends. So being able to pause whatever mindset you have that's getting in your way and just give yourself a break, saying to yourself, you know, I'll just keep practicing this and I will get it eventually. That's going to be a crucial part of the success journey. One of the biggest distinctions that has helped me, and I've seen help other people on this progression, is where do you place your focus? On developing skill or on getting results? And this is where a lot of novices get really stuck. Why? Well, if I don't have a lot of skill yet, if I'm a novice, that means I don't have much skill, right? If I'm focused on getting results, let's say it's in basketball, it's actually getting the ball into the hoop in a game. In other words, how many points do I score? That's a result. Well, I can be elated on a good game. I'd be depressed after a bad game, and I'm going to go through a whole roller coaster of emotions that's going to hold me back, because every time I go into a downward cycle, my learning is actually retarded, physically retarded. The brain does not form connections as easily at that point. So instead, if you focus on skill building, it gives you an avenue of where to go. Let's take the basketball example again. Okay, so you want to score points in a game. Yes. What does that require? Well, you got to be able to handle pressure. You got to be able to move well. But most important of all, you got to be able to throw hoops. You got to be able to put that ball in the hoop. So let's take this. Let's break this down. Let's just stand on the free throw line and throw the ball over and over and over again until I can get the hoop every single time when there's no pressure. Then when you go to a game and the pressure rises, you have a much better chance of actually getting the result because you've got the skill to back it up. So my recommendation is always focus on building a skill set. Don't want to worry about the results. Initially, even, results should be completely irrelevant as long as as long as you're focusing on developing that skill. So another example from the martial arts world. This is a Japanese concept in terms of training design, which is ingenious. I love this. And you see this in a lot of the old traditional martial arts. Let's take the old, straight punch. There's a lot of mechanics within that. That need to be perfected and go well. So instead of doing the whole punch over and over and over again, and therefore training mistakes into it, one of the things they'll do is they'll isolate a certain segment, right? So let's say it might be just the shoulder going forward. So they'll just get the shoulder going forward over and over again until the shoulder is moving the right way. There'll be the shoulder and the elbow. And then bit by bit, you're adding pieces of the movement onto it until the whole chain works smoothly, because every aspect of that chain has been focused on, developed as a skill, and then put together. Hypnosis is no different. If you focus on the outcome, well, the outcome is as a result of having a dozen or more skills working in unison. So it's going to be very difficult to get the outcome at the start. You're better off focusing on the skills that make up the unit of behavior, and then isolating each one and saying, I'm going to focus on this skill. Okay, I'm getting pretty good at this. I'm going to focus on this skill. I'm getting good at that. I'm going to get this skill until I'm good at that. And then when you put all those skills together, the results basically take care of themselves. Skill and how much skill building you do, that's within your control. Results are not within your control. They are a side effect. They're a consequence of your skill and, of course, the luck of the draw in the day. So how that makes sense? Let's go through these again. There's one more that I want to cover with you, but let's go through these so fast so you remember them. For great practice, we need to have the right level of challenge. We need to have a right sequence, a good sequence to follow. We need to have volume, just lots of experiences. And we need to have a good mindset, a good attitude when we're going into it, so that our learning gets enhanced as much as possible. Okay, so the fifth point here is you need to have good feedback. Feedback is the point of learning itself. You do something, you get a certain result, then you've got to analyze that and determine, what does it mean for my skill building? Which way do I go now? So let's take the idea of target shooting, sport shooting, right? Because this is a good example of this. Let's say every time I shoot, I always shoot to the right of the bullseye. What does it tell me? If I look at the results I'm getting, the feedback I'm getting, it tells me that somehow either my sights are off, or more likely my aim is off, or I'm doing something with my hands that pull the gun to one side, and so I'm consistently shooting left. So what do I need to do now? I need to start shooting more towards the right to correct that bias, right? Now, it could be that my hands, if I've got a good instructor, then he'll tell me, oh, your hands are loose, which means the gun will move to the side each time that you fire, and that's why it's going to one side. Or maybe my hands are tight and I'm squeezing too much, so it actually forces the gun out of alignment once again and moves it consistently into the wrong direction. You can analyze that. It's feedback that tells you, next time you try this again, try it with this little variation, right? Loosen your hand a little bit, or aim to the right a little bit, or whatever it might be. So having feedback is really important, because it allows you to not just blindly practice, but to practice with a target in mind and constantly get closer and closer and closer towards it. It's also, by the way, very good for motivation, because if you can see yourself progressing, well, your motivation goes up, right? There's a couple of keys to having good feedback. The most important key of all when it comes to feedback is it's got to be timely. In other words, if you do something today and you get your feedback 2 weeks from now, it's going to be so disconnected in time, it's going to have very little impact on your learning. If you do something today and you get your feedback in an hour, it's a little bit better, but still disconnected. The closer to the present moment the feedback is, the better the learning cycle will be. In other words, I do something, I get instant feedback, I perceive it, and now I have a whole unit of information: action, reaction, contemplation. Now I can do another cycle of action, reaction, contemplation, but my new action will be slightly tweaked and be slightly better than my previous action was, because the two sink in very naturally. Your brain is designed to work well with feedback, instant feedback. It also, by the way, remember we talked about skill challenge, that diagram, which keeps you in flow, which feels very good. Feedback is another condition for flow. The more immediate the feedback is, the more likely you're going to stay in flow. The less feedback you get, or the more delayed the feedback is, the more likely it's going to get kicked out of flow. And flow you can think of as a super learning state in many ways. So what helps you get good feedback? Well, one thing that helps is actually the most important, the most useful thing of all is if you have a good mentor or a good coach standing by telling you, great, this is what happened, now try it this way. Okay, great, this is what happened this time, now try it this way. Because they already know what to do. They can see what you're doing well and what you're not doing so well, and they instantly add a little challenge to keep you progressing closer and closer towards the ideal that you're aiming at. Now, if you don't have access to a good mentor or a good coach, the next best thing is to have a good model to follow. It's going to be a clear model. Remember back to the great information key. It's going to be clear and it's going to be simple. You've got to be able to understand what the model is doing. If the model is so mysterious, you have no idea what they're doing, well, then it's very difficult to use that to get feedback in some way. Ericsson, for example, is incredibly difficult to unpack directly because he was such a sophisticated guy and he himself wasn't quite sure what he was doing half the time. So it's really, really hard to follow him as a model, because he's not so clear what he's doing. He's doing something new each time. Still possible, by the way, but well, at least what helped me in my career was having mentors and coaches along the way that pointed things out in Ericsson as the model. So as they pointed things out that I couldn't see before, and then do an experience of it, and I go, oh, okay, I've just done a small version of what Ericsson did really well there. And then I did what Ericsson did really well over here. I just did over here and here and here and here and so on. So those mentors and coaches help me to understand, to clarify the model, so I know what to pay attention to and what I can ignore. Once I had, let's put it this way, the clearer Ericsson became to me as a model, the easier it became to emulate him, and the easier it was to evaluate my actions, my practice, whether it's getting me closer to the model or taking me further away from that model. So I hope that makes sense so far. Let me just recap again where we're at. We've got great inspiration. We've got great information. We need great motivation. And now we've just been talking about great practice. So the right level, the right sequence, the right volume, the right mindset, and the right feedback. So hopefully you're still with me on this one. And of course, if you have any questions, please type them in and we'll go through a question and answer session in a moment. Okay, so let's go to the next key. We mentioned this earlier on, the idea of having a good, healthy environment in which to grow. Now, what's the value of this? So let's think about this. Just think about your own life. When you've been in a group of people who are just amazing people, you liked hanging out with them, they were supportive, they were kind, they were skilled. What did that do to your level of confidence, to your levels of motivation, to your desire to keep going, or even to by watching other people to emulate something? Now let's contrast that to other environments, less healthy environments. Sadly, for a lot of people, school was that environment where it was more repressive. You didn't like being there. You felt bad. Everything seemed difficult. Everything seemed slow. You getting the feeling of being left behind. So having a healthy environment ups your game, elevates you. Having a toxic environment crushes your game. It hinders you. It prevents you from growing as well as you could. I'm not saying that if you're stuck in a tough place, in a tough environment, that you can't learn. Not at all. It's just going to be harder to learn in that environment than in an environment that's conducive to learning. So what are some of the key components of a healthy environment that's great for learning and growing and proceeding? Well, one of the hallmarks for a healthy environment is, do you have a good support group? We mentioned this earlier. When you have a community that looks after you, takes care of you, is interested in you, cares and is concerned about you, having that support is emotionally, it's very, very powerful. It helps us, especially when we are having a bad day. It's really good to have people to remind us to be the best version of ourselves, rather than people who are constantly pushing us to be the worst version of ourselves. So having a good support group can work magic on someone's ability to progress and succeed. What else helps build a good environment? Well, it's kind of built into this idea of a good support group, and that's having great peers. Basically, great peers are other people on the same path as you, same journey as you. What does that do? Well, first of all, you make connections. People like making connections with other people, and that's part of what keeps us motivated. The other good thing is when you have a group of good peers, is everyone has different strengths. So there's going to be someone in your peer group that's going to be good at something you're not so good at, and vice versa. You'll be good at something they're not so good at. Now, what's useful about this? The first thing it does is it gives you smaller models to follow. In other words, it gives you, if you can't follow Ericsson, at least what this guy's doing, yeah, I can do what he's doing. And you can watch someone much closer to your skill set doing their things, as a result of which it's a lot easier to stay motivated and keep going and actually reach for that than for the great thing that Ericsson's doing, but it may be outside of our league at this point. The other thing it does is it gives us a sense of confidence. If I'm really good at something and everyone else is okay at that, I suddenly get a sense of pride. Look at this. I'm actually good at something. Even though I'm a novice, I actually have a strength, and it feels good to have strength. It's good to play to our strengths. Doesn't mean you have to ignore your weaknesses, but you will progress more quickly when you focus on your strengths. And then later on start eliminating weaknesses. Then if you only hunt weaknesses, especially at the start, if a novice only focuses on weaknesses, then it's a very rare novice that will stick around long enough to become great, if you see what I mean. The other thing having a good peer group does for you is it gives you a different perspective on the information. If you're trapped in your own perspective, your own blinkered view of what this means, and someone else is having success doing what's supposed to be the same thing, but in a way that doesn't make sense to you, well, it puts you on notice that the information that you're looking at has a richer subtext than you're currently aware of. And then you can learn from your peers to enrich what you're doing yourself. Now, here's the good news. This tends to happen unconsciously. It's called implicit learning. We pick up things from our environment all the time. That actually brings me to my next point in terms of what's a healthy environment is. So we've got a good support group, good healthy peers. It also means we have good role models. Remember, when someone is really good at something that you want to be good at, that's a good role model. And especially if it's a peer rather than a master as a role model. Why? Because your peer is within your reach. You can go, you know what? I can do that with a bit of work. With a master, it's a lot harder to tell yourself, oh my gosh, will I ever get there? Who knows? Maybe you will, maybe you won't. So that can be a little more demotivating. But peers who are good role models are fantastic because you know it's within your reach. Think about Andrew Jones, we talked about earlier on the start of our conversation today. One of the big reasons Kurosawa just exploded with talent after he played that match is because he was a great role model. He was within their reach. He wasn't an American. He wasn't someone who went to a $50,000 baseball school. No, this is a local kid who played on the local sports field for pennies, just like they were doing. So if he can do it, I can do it. So role models are really, really helpful, especially when things aren't going as well for us. Okay, so good support groups, good peers, good role models. What else do we need? Well, if you're going to have the ideal environment, then why not? bring in a great mentor or a great coach. We've already talked about having a mentor or a coach for feedback purposes, but they do much more. The point of having a great mentor or a great coach is this is the secret shortcut method to becoming good. Why? Because a good mentor or a good coach has seen it all before. They know the mistakes you're about to make. They can warn you so you can make them faster and learn from them faster, or the ones that are damaging, the ones that are harder to come back from, you can be avoided altogether, right? Let's take the sporting example again. If you're about to do something that is dangerous and is likely to result in a broken leg, well, a coach can spot that and go, you know what, don't do that. Because if you do that, you may end up breaking your leg, then you'll be out for 6 months or whatever, how long it takes for the leg to heal. And you just lost all this time to progress in. So let me save you some time and trouble and effort and pain, and try this way instead. And suddenly you avoid the more dangerous move, you don't get injured, and you now have an extra 4, 5, 6 months of practice you wouldn't otherwise have had. And of course, this is also true of skills themselves. Instead of practicing a lesser skill and having to go back and unlearn it to go do a better version of that, if you can start off doing the greater skill straight away, well, then it saves you a lot of time and effort down the line. It stands to reason, of course. The other thing that an environment does, and this gets us almost full circle back to the idea of inspiration and motivation, having a healthy peer group is it's great to help you develop your own sense of a mission, a purpose, having a higher purpose in what you are doing. We talked about it, of course, earlier on already about how important that is. But being in a healthy environment helps you to have faith in your purpose, to help you remember that this is a good thing. We pick up a lot from our environment. If you're in an environment where everyone's only about got to make money, got to make money, got to make money, you may become very good at making money, but it can become very soulless. If you're in a group of people that have a higher purpose, though, something that is truly inspiring, then that's going to seep into your bones as well. It's going to enhance your own vision. Everyone else's vision, especially the ones that are benign, that you find motivating, they're going to impact on you in a good way. They're going to mix and mingle with your own higher purpose and enrich it, make it a stronger and healthier thing. And that's only going to feed back into your motivation levels and your inspiration levels, which will again directly result in your mindset for better practice and how much you practice. In other words, the volume of your practice. Practice doing things is what's going to make you great. So having an environment that keeps your passions aflamed and keeps you in touch with that higher purpose, well, that's going to help a tremendous amount. Then having to do it solo, and then from time to time, it's natural, it's human nature, just losing sight of why we're doing this or what's important about all this. Because when we lose sight of our higher purpose, that's when we invariably end up taking the wrong left turn. And then it takes us a while to figure out that we're going down entirely the wrong path before we bring ourselves back again in the direction we want to go in. Okay, folks, so let's just summarize again. The keys to success as a great hypnotist are great inspiration, great information, great motivation, great practice, and having a great environment. Now, let's see if I can do this here. Here we go. So let me just send this to you guys. Hopefully you guys can see this there right now. It's not there. That's good. Here we go. I found the chat box at last. All right. So hopefully you have your oh, sorry, Nicholas. I just saw your question. I'll come back to it in a second. The 5 keys are great inspiration, great information, great motivation, great practice, and a great environment. Those are the 5 keys there. And of course, I'll come back to the questions in a moment we get through the question and answer session. So right now, what you're seeing hopefully on your screens is something, basically what we created to put these 5 keys into action. What I've created is an environment, remember the great environment, that I wish I'd had when I first started in hypnosis. It would have saved me a ton of effort, a ton of problems, and I think I would have been where I'm at now in my skills at least 10, 15 years earlier. It could have been so much faster. I mean, you still have to go through a journey, of course, but it's a lot easier to go through this journey when it's already there for you. So let's walk a little bit through how we do this. So I created the Hypnotherapy University, where we have a diploma course. It's a 4-year course for people who are working full time. But some people want to fast track it. They can do it in 2 years. You can go on the fast track if you want to do that as well. There's an option to do that. And in here, I have attempted to put as many of the 5 keys to success as possible. Now let's talk about them in turn. Great inspiration. Well, that's going to be mostly really up to you. You got to have your own reasons for being there. Do you want to be a force for good? Do you want to help people? Do you want to have your own career? These are reasons you got to look at for yourself. But if you're in a group of like-minded people, remember the great environment idea. It's a great place to get even more inspiration from, because when you hear other people's stories, their success stories, their reasons for being here and so on, it has a way of shaping our own inspirations, our own reasons for being here, so that it enriches it, it enhances it. So we may start off with a small vision when we come in, but we end up having a much bigger vision by the time we leave, because we've been in that sort of healthy environment. And I've got to tell you this, I am super impressed with the students that are in the school right now. Now, I think we've got to give the whole classic disclaimers, results do vary and so on. But let me tell you about one of the students that I'm really, really impressed by. And the reason for it is, the first time when we first launched the school, he couldn't afford to come onto it. He desperately wanted to make it, but just couldn't afford it. He was working as a telesales agent and just wasn't making enough money. By this time, we opened the doors a second time for our second intake of students. He managed to save up enough to join us. And my God, he hit the ground running so hard. It's unbelievable how well he's doing. Within less than a year, I believe, he started earning so much money from his hypnotherapy practice that he made himself independent. He's now making a full-time income from just doing hypnosis. Now, of course, results do vary, and one person's results cannot be generalized across everyone else's things and so on. You get the idea. But he's a great example of these keys in action. This guy was so inspired from the get-go. His motivation was through the roof, to the point where, we actually ended up helping him out in terms of the school fees, giving him an exception in terms of a longer payment plan, just so he could afford to come into it, because he was so inspiring to us that we've decided we've got to come into this in some ways. So what else? What do we have in terms of these schools? We've got great inspiration. That's up to you, but of course your peers will help. What do we do for great information? This is one of the most difficult things that I found starting off, because I went to all the wrong schools at first, and I had to go to the wrong schools in order to talk to the students and understand who are the great teachers out there, who have they seen, who are they impressed by. And then I started going to the right teachers. And then with the right teachers, I started finding out what's worth focusing on within hypnosis. What are the skills you have to learn within hypnosis? Not just the technical skills, the people skills and the other skills. So to make your life really easy in the school, what we've done is we've created the entire syllabus for you. The entire 4 years has already been created. I've created 4 years of exercises that will help you build all the skills, the hypnotic skills, the people skills, the professional skills to get you there. What do we mean by these things? Well, the hypnosis skills coaching segment teaches you the hypnosis skills. It goes through hypnotic language, hypnotic techniques, Ericksonian language, Ericksonian metaphors. All that over the 4-year journey is the stuff that you will be using to help people actually make the changes. Then we have a stream on a whole set of modules on applied conversation hypnosis. What are those about? What are the social skills that underpin everything? They were the ones that teach you how to build deep rapport with your clients, so that you are inspired to want to work with you. Those are the skills you'll need to talk to a potential client, so that you can find out what they want or need from you, and at the same time inspire them to actually come and work with you. These are also the skills that underpin your hypnosis. Now, I'll show you what I mean by this. When I first started doing hypnosis, I knew lots of techniques. I'd learned a ton of techniques. But when I actually got a client, clients are messy people. And I don't mean they have messy rooms. What I mean is they present the problem in a messy way. I had no idea which technique to use. There's this and there's that, and then there's this going on, something else going on. Oh my gosh, which technique do I use? Because the techniques were meant to solve specific things. And it was very rare that a client presented that problem in a way where I instantly went, oh, I have a technique for just that thing. I had to work out which techniques to use and how to use them and how to break them apart and do something else with them, right? So applied conversation hypnosis helps you to find all the pieces, all the raw materials from which to construct the trance afterwards. I'm not a big believer in scripts. I think scripts are fine to learn from, to read and go, oh, some interesting ideas here. I think they're wonderful for hypnotic language patterns themselves, so you can pick up some nice ways of phrasing things. But in terms of reading an entire script out to a client, no, I don't. I've done that, gosh, in my early days, I did it a few times and I've never liked it. I've liked the more freestyle version more, which is more adaptive, where I can change it to match what the client actually wants or needs at the time, in the moment. And it's only when I switched to that approach that I really started seeing successes that I was really pleased with and I'm proud of. So applied conversation hypnosis was the missing link for me. For many years, I tried to find this. It's the bit which allows you to find the raw materials that go into your trance, the right suggestions, the right phrasing of suggestions that mind will accept. And then suddenly life becomes easier. It's also the heart of conversational hypnosis for me. When I did executive coaching, I did a much cruder version of what you will learn in applied conversation hypnosis. Why? Well, because in certain environments, you can't use formal hypnotic tactics. So the applied so conversation hypnosis is called for more covert sort of hypnosis. And that, again, requires you to be able to hold good conversations that have hypnotic qualities to them. So again, we've got the hypnosis skills for their therapeutic contents and how to help people change, and the applied conversation hypnosis for the context in which all the other stuff sits, to gather information you need for your trances, and sometimes to even fix the problem before you do the formal trance in the first place. That's my preferred way of working with it, because when the problem's been fixed before the trance even starts, well, then the trance itself, or the formal trance, shall we say, is just icing on the cake. It becomes easy, it becomes fun for everyone, and I really enjoy working that way, right? The third stream in the school is the professional skills, and this is something that I think has been missing in hypnosis. There are some schools out there now starting to introduce this, which I think is tremendous. I think it's very important. But how do we get clients? You know, how do you motivate someone to want to actually work with you? When I first started, I did it all backwards, completely the wrong way around. In fact, I alienated a bunch of my friends because I was so desperate for business that I kept motor mouthing and telling them what an amazing thing hypnosis is and why they should come and work with me. And quite frankly, they got bored of me, and quite rightly so, by the way. I was not the most professional in my presentation of myself. So what does it take to be a professional? I'll give you the big picture version very quickly now if you're interested. You've got to be a leader in your community. And I don't mean you've got to become the mayor of your town. That's not what I mean. It means you've got to be seen by the people in your community as a force for good, as someone who's out there doing things. Here's a good analogy for it. Let's say you want to become physically fit, healthy, and strong. And you walk into a gym and you've got two trainers available to you. One trainer looks like a Greek god. He's chiseled and is physically perfection. The other trainer is overweight and looks unhealthy, big bags under his eyes, and looks like he's going to have a heart attack any moment now. Which of the two trainers do you choose to be your personal trainer? Well, most people, almost everyone, chooses the healthy, physically strong person. Why? They're a calling card for what they do, right? You're basically saying, I want the results that you got. I want to do to my body what you did to your body. Show me what you did. Hypnosis is no different. If we are leaders in our community, we are demonstrating to people what an amazing force for good hypnosis can be. And that takes us becoming a certain kind of personality, certain insights on how we present ourselves, how we talk to people, how we support people in our community, how we help others, where we meet people, how we make connections, and all that kind of stuff. This brings us to another point, and this is actually a bonus that's part of the school. I threw that in there as a bonus. It's actually part of a separate program that I've got. But I made sure that we threw it in as a bonus for the school because it helps us to do exactly that last part, to be a template to demonstrate to the world, you know what, hypnosis has changed my life. I'm sure it'll help you and help you change your life too. And that's mind training. I've recorded, how many was it now? 730 plus, I think it's about 730 individual guided hypnotic meditations. They're designed to train your mind systematically, step by step by step, to be healthier, to be happier, to be more success-oriented, to solve problems better, all these sort of things that are going to be good for us anyways, But one of the reasons I did this, one of the reasons I insisted that this was going to be part of the school as a bonus, as opposed to just being a separate program, which is, of course it is as well. No charge to you, by the way, this has been included in the school price for you, is because if you make the effort of training your mind properly, then you will be like that Greek god of a trainer. You just exude a natural, healthy, happy, cheerful vibe that people look at and go, wow, that person's amazing. How does he do that? I want whatever he's got. I want to drink whatever he's been drinking. And that's the secret to a successful hypnotherapy practice, being that kind of influence in the world. Many years ago, I read a book. It's a crazy little book called The Secret to Money is Having Some. But it had an idea in it that really struck me. And he had a formula for success, which I to this day, try to follow, which is, it's a simple two-step formula. Step one is you work on yourself as a human being until you're such an awesome person that people around you are just inspired. They just feel like they're better people. They like hanging around you. They enjoy being around you. And when they're around you, they feel like they're a better version of themselves. That's actually quite a tall order there. Step two then is when people start showing up regularly, charge them. Now, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, of course, the way they said that. But this is the essence of how hypnosis works. Hypnosis works because, or at least what attracts people to hypnotherapy practice, what attracts people to a specific hypnotist? Well, they have a problem. And here's a person who seems to have their life together, who seems to be mentally strong, and they get attracted to that. They see a glimpse within you of what they want for themselves. So by training it into yourself, well, it's going to exude in your conversation. It's going to exude in your attitude, and people will pick up on this unconsciously. And I cannot tell you how much easier it is to inspire someone to want to come work with you as a client when you have this when you've trained your mind in these ways, than when you yourself feel like a wreck going into the meeting in the first place. That is a terrible way of doing it. You're going to be mentally focused, mentally sharp, and mentally healthy. And that will change how you speak, where you speak, your tonality, the whole works. It's very, very attractive. People like that. People respond to that very, very well. That's why we've included this as a special bonus to the school as well. So what else do we have? So that's the great practice. So we've got, of course, all these training courses I've discussed here. The mind training is 730 individual sessions. You'll get them daily, spread out throughout the time that you're at the school. The other courses, the hypnosis skills coaching, the applied conversation hypnosis coaching, and the professional skills coaching, those come in hour-long modules, and you get them in alternate weeks. So in week one, you'll get the hypnotherapy skills coaching module. In week two, you'll get the professional skills and the applied conversation hypnosis, and they keep alternating like that. And of course, week one, you also get the bonus mind training as well. And this way you keep alternating back and forth this way. If you have the time and the energy for doing this, to go for the fast track, then all four modules come together. The hypnosis skills coaching, the professional skills, the applied conversation hypnosis, and the mind training all arrive in your inbox at the same time, actually in your school's inbox at the same time, so that you can go through them in the same week. If you're on the regular track, on the other hand, you'll have the mind training and the hypnosis skills in 1 week, and of course, the following week, you get the other stuff. By the way, folks, go ahead and check out the link if you haven't done so already at this point. The offer there, I believe, is good for the first 100 people. We're going to give you a free trial of the school. So if what I'm saying to you right now, it seems interesting, something you're going to try out, we'll give you a completely 100% free trial run of it. So just jump in there, try it out for yourself, and then decide from your own experience if the school's the right environment for you. I'll talk a little bit more about the school in a moment. I just make sure that you don't hang on, because it is very much first come, first serve on that, right? So the link should already be live. If you have any problems with the LinkedIn, just message me. Got a whole bunch of messages here. And I will go through these in a moment for the Q&A session. So I will address any questions you've had as best as I can. Okay, so coming back to what else we have here. Okay, so one of the things about these coaching modules, hypnosis skills, applied conversation hypnosis, PSC, and so on, is it's taking care of the path of great information for you. First of all, we explain all the ideas very simply. You'll see most of the ideas in action. Some of the professional skills ideas, of course, you just have to put into action. That should be very easy to understand from the conversations that we have. And most important of all, you get to practice them. Every single lesson you receive will have clearly defined things to practice. Do these things so you can build these skills. I cannot tell you how important that thing is. In fact, when I first started, when I started getting good at hypnosis, this is exactly what I did for myself. Those of you who are familiar with my book, The Deep Trance Training Manual, I wrote that not to publish it. I wrote that for a private hypnosis group that I was running with my friends. And I wrote it so that we wouldn't just sit around and have a chat. I wrote it so we would actually practice and practice and practice doing good hypnosis. So it's our own training manuals to keep ourselves motivated and keep going and keep improving. And of course, once it was written, once we had finished it and had a good time with it, I sent it off to a publisher just in case they might be interested. And lo and behold, they actually loved it and they printed it. It was a complete accident on my side, right? Now, the school, of course, is a much more sophisticated journey. It's a 4-year journey. So I've mapped out every step you need to take in terms of the skills you need to build, both in your technical hypnosis skills, both in your social skills, and in your professional skills to organizing yourself, your mind, your time, the way you present yourself to the world, and so on. And everything is done systematically so you can build up as you go along. So what else do we have here? Oh, yes. So that's just the information level, right? But remember, we talked about another key being great practice. Without practice, hypnosis is not a spectator sport. There's not much you can do with hypnosis if all you do is know stuff. You've got to do stuff to get good at doing that stuff, right? That's the rule of life in general anyways. You get good at doing things by doing them, right? So how are you going to do this? This was such a frustration for me when I first started. I can't even tell you. When I was a student, it was actually okay. At university, you have lots of open-minded people with whom you can practice, and I did, and I enjoyed that a great deal. But once I graduated, it was incredibly frustrating to find people to practice with. In the end, what I ended up doing is I had to sign up for people's seminars. I spent, before I even started the Hypnosis Training Academy, I spent over $180,000 in seminar fees and flights and hotel fees and all kinds of other stuff. I spent an insane amount of money. Just half the time was just to have people to practice with. And of course, when those people were from the same town as me, I was living in London at the time in the UK. So when people were from London, I'd make sure to try and keep in touch with them so we could keep going and practicing afterwards. But invariably, those groups worked again for a few weeks, and then people's time would fizzle out and it dry up again. And then I had to go to another seminar, recruit some more friends, and start the whole process over again. It was exhausting. I have fixed this problem for you in the school. I am so proud of this. This is, if nothing else, this is one of the best features of the school. And I so wish that existed when I started. I can't tell you how much this would have saved me in terms of suffering on the ways. And that is, the school itself has built-in technology that you can talk to the other students anytime you want. Now, here's how this works. You can make an appointment with another student anytime, day or night. We've got students all over the world, so most time zones can be accommodated. And just meet up with them on our platform and have video conference calls, kind of like we're doing right now. Of course, this is one way, of course, but you'll do it 2 ways. And you can practice every lesson. You can put it into practice every single day if you wanted to. Secondly, students have become very proactive, and they are running their own practice groups. In other words, they get their little get-together on a theme. It might be mind-bending language, it might be setting up a practice, it might be doing hypnotic journeys. There's a theme that they run every week, and then people get together and they practice those things. So you get some practice at those groups also. The third thing we've done, this is the best one of them all, is we have daily practice group calls led by our instructors. In other words, we have a high-quality hypnotist sitting down every single day at 2 p.m. till 3 p.m. Eastern time, and they're running a practice group. What's going to happen in that practice group call is, first of all, you're going to get a chance to ask the instructor any questions you have. So if you've got any questions about the materials you've learned, then you can ask the instructor, and he'll answer them for you straight away. They've been through the materials that you have, so they know it pretty much inside out. Anything they can't answer, if you come up with a novel question that they just don't know how to answer, it happens from time to time still, they'll turn that question to me, and I'll answer the question, and they will in turn bring the answer back to you again. So you'll always get an answer to your question, or at least the best answer that's currently available to us will come back to you. That's incredibly important. Again, when I first started, the only place I could find answers to questions was by going to live seminars and talking to the various hypnotists and just hoping I chose a good hypnotist because not everyone had good answers. Sometimes I had to mine it in books and videos. I had to just really, really concentrate to go through them to find an answer to a question. But it's very hard to know which book will have the answer that you're looking for. Sometimes I have to read dozens of books before I found the answer to a burning questions that I had. This is much more easy for you. Just wait until the next day, next practice group, ask your question. 9 times out of 10, you'll get an answer. And the 1 time out of 10 you don't, they'll bring the answer to the question to me. And then usually I will have an answer for that as well. I don't have an answer to everything, of course. I don't pretend to. So, by the way, folks, if this is still up your street right now and you're interested in this, you can see how we've woven these 5 keys into the school and you want to try it out completely for free, then please head over to the link I've sent to you guys. And I will, and of course, take advantage of the free offer, right? It's no skin off your nose. I believe what we have to do though is we're going to charge you $1, and this is just a administrative legal thing. For legal reasons, we can only take on students who are over 18 years old. Without parental consent, of course. So the dollar fee is a basic credit card transaction fee that tells us that you're over 18, right? If you decide you don't like the school after trying it out for a month and you're going to leave and you really want that dollar back, you're more than welcome for us. We'll happily refund it to you if you can be bothered with it. So the dollar is not really, it's not going to make us rich. Doesn't do anything for us. It really is just a legal divider that tells us you're over 18, which means we can give you access to these materials without getting in trouble in various jurisdictions there, right? Otherwise, it's completely free. Join it, try it out, try out the materials, go to the practice groups, ask your questions, and most important of all, practice in the practice groups. That's the other thing the instructors will do for you. The instructors will, once they've answered your questions, they'll pair you up with other students so you can practice there and then. Now, if one of your questions is about, I don't understand how something works, they may actually coach you. They may actually get you to do the exercise with a student and then help correct you and show you what's missing. You can also typically just get partnered up with another student and then go off in private to go carry on practicing with them. So typically what happens is people come for the 2 or 3 o'clock slot. They stay there, they practice in the group, learn some lessons, ask some questions. And when the group finishes, they carry on practicing with people who are on that call because they're currently available. So you can have more practice. Now, one of the reasons for doing this is it guarantees you will have 1 hour each day where you will have someone to practice with. Because if you go to a practice group call and no other students show up, so you have no other student to practice with, guess what? It's your lucky day. You now get to practice with an instructor for the entire hour, one-to-one. You just got a private practice session with an instructor that would normally charge several $100s for their time as a hypnotherapist. So good on you there. You will have someone every single day from 2 p.m. till 3 p.m. to practice with, and that's guaranteed as long as we don't have some freak, thunderstorm that crashes our servers, something like that, which will be a freak thing anyway, so if you get what I mean, right? So we've got the informal practice groups, we've got the formal practice groups, and of course you're more than welcome to practice with any students at any time of day, as long as you, of course, agree to meet up at the same time. Another feature that we've built in here is the orientation calls. And this is particularly important for you guys when you first start. These calls are designed entirely for the new students, the new intakes. And those orientation calls, the name implies, helps you get the hang of the ropes. It shows you how the technology works, how to start and stop calls in different sections. It walks you through where you find your lessons, how to download them. It shows you where the forum is, so you can interact with other students, ask questions, post questions, make announcements. It'll show you where the calendar is, where the hypnotic language cards are that you'll find that you can be able to work with. All those things will be shown to you in the orientation call. Other than that, it'll function very much like the practice group call. You'll still be able to practice, but whilst you have as you first joined, your content, the stuff you'll learn, will still be on a more basic level. So the orientation calls only focus on the first few months of content, so that you're guaranteed never to have your mind blown by a senior student trying to take over the session. These sessions are for you to get your feet wet and understand how the school works, and to get to enjoy how easy it is. Now, in practice, these orientation calls are so successful that within a week or two, everyone has migrated from the orientation calls into the practice group calls, and they feel very comfortable. They dive in, they ask questions, they practice, have a blast, and hopefully you will too. That's what it's designed to do. But for those, if you're afraid that you might not be such a quick starter, if you think like, I don't know if a week or two is going to be enough for me, the orientation calls are going on throughout the entire year anyways, regardless, and they only ever focus on the first few months of the school material. So it's always going to be very simple, basic stuff that you can kind of get your feet wet with again. And in this way, you've got a guaranteed place where the information is simple enough that you can just get your feet wet and build up a good learning rhythm there too. So that kind of takes care of the practice. Why? Because we've got the right level of challenge. Each lesson gets progressively more difficult. We've got the sequence all mapped out for you for the entire 4 years. Volume, you could practice 24 hours a day almost, if you had that much energy, of course. But you can practice a huge amount of time. Mindset, well, mindset-wise, that's going to be up to you. You're going to have to come with a good mindset. We do have a code of conduct at school. When you join a school, remember it's for free for you guys. So go ahead and click on the link if you're already interested, because I think it's only the first 100 spots that we are letting do this trial run, because of course we've got manpower issues to make sure that everyone gets personal attention here, right? So we do have a code of conduct that requires you to be, polite to other students and instructors, and you've got to bring something to the table too. That's good because you're practicing a healthy mindset that's going to help you be more professional there too. You're going to get feedback from the instructors. If you're not sure about an exercise, you'll do the exercise, you'll get instant feedback, help you correct it. We also have mentors. So the instructors will also arrange with you one-to-one calls at regular periods. When you first join, it might be a bit more often to kind of help you get the hang of things. As you get more experience, you call your mentor a little bit less often because you won't need it as much. But these mentors will help you do all kinds of things. Number one of the top roles a mentor will do, one of the top tasks will do, is to help you to organize yourself to succeed with the school. In other words, help you get the right mindset, help you to organize your schedule, help you to figure out when you'll practice, how you'll practice, where you'll practice. Make sure you're not taking on too much or too little. They've got this thing down. They will walk you through step by step how successful students have done this in the past, so you can basically model their success, emulate them, be as successful as the past students, so that then you can go and rise in your own way. But this is so that no one falls between the cracks. If you're a little bit shyer, your mentor will kind of help you to figure things out within the systems and encourage you to go to the practice groups or the orientation calls so you can take advantage of all those things as well. But please do remember, whilst they are your mentors to help you succeed with the school, they're not your counselors or your therapists. If you need some kind of therapy, look, if it's a quick thing, we'll happily help you fix it, right? If it's a bigger thing, then which requires a bit more time, then what most students have done is they've asked a senior student at school, would you like to practice your skills by helping me fix this? And that's usually a really good exchange. But of course, you've got to ask someone, and they've got to be willing. They've got to volunteer their time. And that's helped a huge amount. Now, some things are bigger issues that either a senior student might not be interested in or hasn't got the authority to work with, in which case it's your responsibility, of course, to find your own therapist to help you with those things. Because we're a hypnotherapy training school, we're not a group hypnosis or hypnotherapy thing. This is not a personal coaching program. This is to teach you how to become a world-class, elite-level hypnotist. Okay, so we've got, this is the environment is, we've got great support, amazing peers. All the students are hugely welcoming, very kind, very energizing, and actually very inspiring, I find. We've got so you have great peers there. You've got great role models, because you've got senior students as well as students who are just ahead of you and students who will be joining with you. So you can see all the different levels of progression. Instructors are there as well. You have great mentors and coaches. The instructors are there for you every single day to ask your questions, to request feedback, to request demos, to kind of push you a little bit if you want to get pushed a little bit, to help you fix a problem if you're not quite sure what the problem might be, etc. By the way, if this is sounding like the kind of thing that you want, then once again, just head on over to the link we've sent to you already. Let me just double check it's already live. That's not where we're going. Yep, so that's live there. So just you should be seeing it in your box here, somewhere around here right now. And sign on up because it's absolutely free. There's nothing for you to lose at this time, right? Yes. So I think that kind of covers most of the school. in terms of what we're doing here. When you join up, of course, remember it's for free. You have a bunch of little training videos to introduce you to the school and how it's working and what's expected of you, what we'll be doing. So that'll explain itself much more as well. This is really just to show you how we've designed the school to implement these 5 keys to help you master things. So if you like that, go ahead and click on the link. It's free to join, really just $1 for the legal reasons. And I'm going to go through all the questions you have. So please bear with me as I read and try and figure out which ones are comments and which ones are questions. Okay. All right, let's have a look here. Yeah, so in terms of PayPal, please can you email the office. I'm not quite sure what payment system we take. We normally would take a credit card just because it's easier to process things. I don't know if our system is set up to take payments through PayPal. So something you're going to have to ask. Just call up our hotline and they should be able to answer that for you. Okay. Okay, more questions. Anyone already around? Okay, that's good. Yes, John has a question about, is it all the times are in EST? Yes, Eastern Standard Time is the school's time zone. This way that, wherever you are in the world, you'll have to acclimatize. If you're in Europe, you'll have to add 5 or 6 hours. If you're in Asia, of course, it goes the other way. If you're on the Pacific side of the US, you of course subtract 3 hours. So it basically allows us all to use the same standard time when we're talking about things. So some people are asking here whether there was so there's a question about how can you start a support community as he doesn't have any support where he's at this point. Okay, so the easiest way to start a supportive community is, well, the lowest level support is friends and family, right? If your friends and family aren't supportive, well, there's not much you can do about family, but there's a lot of things you can do about friends. Basically, recruit more friends, new friends, better friends, people that will actually support you. I find the way I did it was I went to various seminars, and you just gel with people there. And when you gel with people there, then you stick together. Nowadays, it's so much easier to keep in touch with people. You have all kinds of online tools to do that, so that even if they're in different parts of the world, you can still stay in touch with people and motivate each other. One of the things I used to do when I first started, and actually things like Skype and stuff didn't exist yet, we'd use phone calls. We would actually phone once, twice, 3 times a week to kind of encourage each other, talk about things, and keep the interest going. And then we try once every week, every 2 weeks to have an actual live meetup where we meet up and practice things again. It was a little harder at the time because the technology wasn't there. That's been solved now. So use the technology. People from around the world will help you if you reach out for them and ask them for help. So I'm just trying to figure out which ones of these are questions. Okay, Nicholas. Okay, so Nicholas asking a question about the Cartesian theory of suggestibility, of course. Yes, I'm familiar with it. So here's the thing. I do not follow that model. It's actually an interesting model. I'm not going to say it's not useful. It's actually worked very well for some people, but I don't actually follow that model myself. I have a base level assumption, which is everyone is suggestible. Everyone is. You just have to find the right approach. And this is kind of going into the Cartesian theory. They just try to make it easy. It's like it's type A or type B. I think it's the emotional or the I can't remember the labels for it anymore. It's been a while since I looked at that model. Anyways, the point is they just separate the world into two core types of suggestibles, and you change your suggestions according to which one it is. I think it's emotional or physical might have been it, right? I do not make those distinctions. I determine what style of suggestions to give from the conversation I'm having with the person. I just notice what they respond to, and those things they respond to become suggestions for me. How do we know what to look out for? That entire stream is covered in applied conversation hypnosis. That's its purpose, is to help you figure out what does this person need to hear in order to be influenced for the better, to be a force for good in their life. And that's really the whole point of that. Again, if you want to follow the Cartesian theory, by all means do so. I personally don't. I don't do that. I try and bespoke my suggestions specifically to each individual. So the more I can spend time speaking to them, the more I know my suggestions will hit home, because they're built out, they're made out of the raw materials that come straight from inside of their own mind. So for conversational hypnosis, it's especially important. As I say, whether it's emotional or physical, in types of suggestibility according to the Cartesian model, I do not make that distinctions. I do not worry about that. I don't need to, because each individual has its own unique set of suggestions created from the conversation we're doing anyway. And again, we'll show you exactly how to do that in the Applied Conversation Hypnosis, and to a certain extent, the Hypnosis Skills Coaching course as well. Okay, what is a hypnotic induction? How can I learn it? Well, hypnotic inductions, Shahan, is essentially a ritual you use in order to, it's a ritual that separates social reality, we're now talking as social peers, into hypnotic reality in which other things can occur. Why do I say this? Because you can do hypnosis without any formal induction process at all. You can do hypnosis without someone looking like they're a stone zombie either. There are different ways of telling when someone's in trance conversationally than the classic, someone's very relaxed and drooling from the mouth sort of look. But initially, it's actually helpful to do some of the more traditional inductions in order to kind of get some confidence, get a sense of the basics and what to look out for and so on. Now, if money's an issue and you want to have a simple example of this in action, this whole question really is answered by the book I wrote, the Deep Trance Training Manual. It's incredibly cheap. I can't remember exactly how much it is right now, but it's around the $20 mark, something like that. And that is filled with exercises and inductions that you can run with, that you can do with your friends, and basically build your skills. So hopefully that's a very simple resource. If not my book, there's lots of other books out there that give you lots of inductions. Choose one of them. In fact, go on YouTube and there's a whole bunch of people giving you free inductions as well. So start there if you want, okay? Okay, so Igor, what's the best habit for metaphors, creating metaphors and skills? All right, so this is an interesting one. And by the way, folks, it seems like some of your comments are falling off the bottom. So if that happens, please repost your question, because I can see some of the questions disappearing before I answer them. And I apologize for that. I just don't know how to let the chat run longer than it does. It's a limitation, it seems, from the system. Okay, so to create great metaphors, get a good habit for metaphors is symbols, right? Turn everything to symbols. Ask yourself the question, what could this represent? When you look at a tree, what could it represent? Well, it could represent nature, freshness, growth, aliveness. If you start thinking these terms, you start thinking metaphorically, then basically everything becomes a metaphor. In fact, currently, scientists are looking at how we learn things, how we make sense of things, and it's a concept called embodied cognitions or embodied metaphors. It's exactly what we do. Here's a classic example of it. Why is up usually good and down usually bad? How do you feel today? I'm feeling down. Oh, what do you think? I'm rising high, right? Why executive CEO office in the top level, and why are the janitors in the basement, status-wise speaking, right? Well, think about when you grow up. Who's got all the power? The big people, the adults, they're tall, right? When you have your sippy cup full of drink, right? When the level is high, up, there is more good stuff, there's more good food. When it's down, it's gone, it's empty, there's nothing left. So you've lost something. So this is a way of that the idea of up being good and down being bad has been kind of programmed into us by our life experiences. So start looking at life like that and start decoding it directly, and suddenly you'll realize everything people say, everything people do, everything you touch is something that can represent something else. Now you've got the essence of metaphor. Okay, so I've lost a bunch of questions, unfortunately, because as you guys post more stuff, they seem to be disappearing from me. So I apologize for that. I'm going to try and get to the questions as quickly as possible so that I don't lose any more. So I've got a couple of comments here, that's good. So I've got one here from Gary. So people have lied for at least, how can you open people's eyes to what is real? Okay, so you talk about a socialist is about helping people see the world for what it is, not for what they think it is. It's it's a difficult thing to do. One of the simplest ways of doing this, Gary, is there's no surefire way, by the way. If there were a surefire way, then the current left-right divide that's going on in the whole world would not exist, because it's basically two people with fundamentally different propositions of how they look at life, and using the experimental bias. In other words, they are proving themselves to be right over and over and over again. We like to prove ourselves right. So how to prove someone is wrong without shutting them down? Well, that's really tricky. Now, there's a couple of rules for this. First rule, you need deep levels of rapport, absolutely guaranteed base level, right? You want to have an example of how to change people's minds who don't want their minds changed. Read Socrates. He works as hard to keep people engaged in the conversation as challenging them through that conversation. And that's actually where I learned one of the most important, valuable details of conversation hypnosis. You need deep levels of hypnotic rapport. How do you do this? Well, actually, believe it or not, the applied conversation hypnosis coaching, which is one of the modules in the school, is exactly addressing that point. The first year and a bit of the school, of the 4-year program, so the first year and almost a year and a half, but not quite, is entirely dedicated to developing hypnotic rapport. Why? Because that's what opens the mind up and shows you how to respectfully help them change their mind without trying to force them to change their mind, which is, of course, what shuts it back down again. If you join the school, of course, you'll see you should see the beginnings of that happening. We'll start off with light levels of rapport, and then run about it's probably about month 4 or so, we start introducing the deep rapport questions, because we need some skills underlying it first. And that's when you get into that side. We'll also be launching soon a product on a hypnotic rapport deck to pull that out of the school and keep it as a separate thing for people who want to practice that element. So keep an eye out for that part too. Hypnotic rapport is the simplest way to open the mind and then start exploring what they aren't seeing at this point. Without that, no other strategy will work properly that I'm aware of. So that's kind of why I emphasize it so much and why we spend so much time in this school developing that. I hope that helps you a little bit. Of course, I'm going to get to other questions because you've asked a huge question. But kindness, appreciation, and hypnotic rapport, all these things open the mind and give you a shot at helping people change people's minds. Okay. Okay. By the way, thank you, Elizabeth and Jordan, for joining the school. We've got a couple of people who just joined the school, so you can see their experiences in the comments as well. So thanks for that, guys. Okay, here's a question. So Adrian is currently training CHP with one of our trainers. Okay, excellent question. Will the CHPH duplicate what you're learning? 100%. That's exactly what we want to do. In fact, in the first generation of the school, we had people do the online version of the school, and they actually paid a much higher fee because it included the seminar fee, so they can go to a live seminar as well to integrate the knowledge and actually add another layer of it. Live seminars have a different feel and different vibe, and they do different things in the mind to the online version because they condense everything into a closer unit of time, so you can see the bigger picture much more easily. The online version allows you to spread it all out and then master each individual aspect of it. So yes, there will be a whole bunch of things you have not seen in the online version, but there'll be a lot of things in the CHPH. Like, let's put it this way: I'd say about 3/4 of the first 2 years of the HSC course are the CHP techniques, but here's a big difference. You will go into massive depth with them. In the live training, it's a 6-day training, you will cover them, probably roughly about half a day per technique, roughly speaking. So that works out about 2 hours, right? In the school, you end up spending about, it'll be about 2 months per technique. So at least 4 modules, 4 sessions. We'll focus on each technique, so we can really break it apart to different exercises around it to really get to understand it. So yes, it gets duplicated, and that is exactly on purpose so that you don't just skim the surface. You can get the depths and really get to grips with the things that are underlying it and really, really get to grips with it. We also have other seminars, the Ericksonian. So CHPH is level 1 hypnosis. Level 2 is Ericksonian hypnosis. Level 3 is Ericksonian metaphors. Those also get mirrored in the schools in the third and fourth years of the school. The third year is level 2 hypnosis, and the third year is level 3 hypnosis. And of course, each one of those has a live version of it available as well. And I think the live version is so useful to our students that we are currently negotiating with our trainers a special discount for our students. So if you want to go visit a licensed trainer's seminar, we don't collect a single penny from that. All the fees go to the trainer, but we do insist that in return the trainer gives you a big discount, and we're just negotiating what that discount will be specifically for that reason. So I hope you answered your question. If you have a follow-up to that, Adrian, please feel free to post it. So Menifee, I totally get you about being overloaded. Do not add more stress to yourself. When life starts to get a little bit easier for yourself, by all means join in, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you there. Okay. So I'm just going through more questions here. Okay, Leo has a question. Okay, so Leo is asking, how hard would it be to apply the skills in another language? Actually, it will be effort, no question about it. You'll have to do some effort to translate it, but because we teach it conceptually rather than by rote, it's actually pretty straightforward. All you have to do is manage to express the meaning and the principle in your own language. So as an example, some of the practice groups in the school have been in other languages. We've had a German language group, we've had a French language group, and I believe we have a Spanish language group at some point. I'm not sure if they're currently still active. I've got to look at the latest stats to see which language groups are available. I believe for a while there might have been a Russian one as well. I don't know if that's still ongoing, Leo, but I believe there's a Russian one there too. Now, the easiest way of achieving this is if you decide to join us, which I hope you do, then just do a shout out on the forum or go to different practice groups and find out if anyone speaks your target language. If they do, then offer to put on an informal practice group, which you can do straight from the beginning. We've got all the systems ready for you. We'll set you up with that so that you can do all the exercises in your target language as well. What I can't guarantee is that we cover all the languages. We'll cover, there's lots of people from all around the world there. So there will be more than one language present if you should want that. But I can't guarantee which languages will be present at any point in time. So the more people, let's say Russian is your target language. So check around to see if people who've joined are speaking Russian. If they have, invite them to start a group with you. And then you can do all the exercises in Russian. And I think people had some tremendous success with that already. So hopefully that answers the questions for you. Gary's asking, what about Thera? I'm not quite sure what your question is, Gary. Oh, what about therapy? So if the question is, can you get therapy from people? We've addressed that earlier on, but I'll remind you again. So if you want therapy, your job is to get a therapist to help you. That's really the responsibility. What a lot of students have done, and I totally encourage this though, is if it's a contained piece of work, then go to a senior student or one of your peers once they've got a little bit more experience on that, someone you feel like you can trust, and say, would you be willing to do this work with me? And see what they say. Most often people say yes, because they love doing the practice, but you can't guarantee it. I can't promise that for you. This is not a place to get therapy, right? So if other people are willing to do it for the practice, then it's a win-win all around. That's something you negotiate with them directly. But we won't be doing the therapy for you. This is a training school. And so that's what you're signing up for at that point. It's your responsibility to make sure that you're in the right mind place to succeed with the school. And if that means others are going to help you with that, great. Very often they do. I can't promise that because I can't make promises for other people. So in the case that it doesn't happen, then you're going to have to find your own therapist. And I apologize for that laugh a little bit. I just saw Peter's comment about the subliminal advert for Perrier. Wasn't trying to advertise it. I'm just making sure I don't lose my voice whilst I'm talking to you guys. Okay, I'm on the training school, but I'm on my mobile. No links to click to get anything. So Billy, best thing to do is email us as soon as possible. Better still, call us. There's a hot number on our HTA site. and tell them that you're interested, and they'll get you set up as quickly as possible. And it looks like Mello still has sent you a link, which is even better. So that might actually make it even easier for you there as well. So thanks for that, Mello, still for helping him out there. Hopefully that's resolved it before I got here. Okay, that's answering the language question. Peter, yes. So we worked really hard to bring the course fee down. When we first launched the school, we had a few extra bells and whistles in, and the entire program cost $18,000. It was way out of most people's reach, unfortunately. So we worked really, really hard to streamline things, simplify things, take the cost burden off us, so we can pass those savings on to you. And we've brought it down to the absolute rock bottom price we can make it happen. I want lots of people to do this, so I don't want price to be an issue. But price is a part of an issue because I can't do it for free. We need income to be able to maintain all these systems. So thank you for acknowledging, Peter. It is an incredibly good deal. I have spent so much money. I wish that was the sum I had to pay to get started, but here you go, right? That's called progress, I guess. So Jordan is quite right. We are working on grading discounts for level 1, 2, and 3 hypnosis for our students. So we'll keep you updated when we have more information there. All right, just keep coming with the questions, folks. I'm making progress right now. Oh, thanks, Manifi. There's the questions there. Okay, how to start a support communities? I do not have any such option here. I think we've already answered that earlier. So let me just keep going. Thanks, Manifi. I really appreciate your comment. Jeff, actually, unfortunately, I won't be running any trainings in Canada this year. Unfortunately, I've had some hiccups with the visa, so I have to be leaving Canada at the end of this month, and I won't be able to come back to Canada for, gosh, at least a year to kind of clear up the issue a little bit. So I won't be in Canada, but we do have a trainer in Canada. So there's a trainer in Toronto. So do look up. I think it's Irina Benoit. She will have courses for sure in Canada this year. Jan is asking if this is an accredited course. No, you will be certified. This is a diploma course from us, but we're not linked to any other schools, any government organizations, anything like that. We are more than happy to get accredited, but we'll need one of you guys to step up. For example, Jan, if you have a particular place that you want to get accredited by, if you're willing to do the legwork, we'll happily provide all the support material you need. We'll show them the course. We'll discuss the outlines. We'll discuss what we're doing and so on to help get the accreditation done. We just don't have the manpower right now to get accreditation across all the big international organizations. And if we, let's put it this way, in order to do that, we would have to jack the fees back up to hire someone specifically to jump through the hoops. We don't have that right now. So if you're willing to do it, then I'm happy to support you and give you any materials the accreditation area needs. But you'd have to do the legwork. You'd have to talk to them, and we'll just show anything they want to see. We'll make available to them so they can acknowledge, they can see that this is a quality course, right? So James, this is all new training or snippets from past trainings? The answer is a bit of both. The content of the school is 100% new. In fact, I have recorded everything fresh just for the school. We do have some bonus materials, which are basically all the DVD sets that support the content of the school. So you may or may not have bought those, but those are bonuses. The content of the school is brand new. They will mirror some of the other courses. We talked about level 1, 2, and 3 hypnosis. They get mirrored there. And some of the things that are coming out of the applied conversation hypnosis, like, for example, the hypnotic rapport principle, is being turned into actual courses that people can buy outside of the school. So you're not forced to join the school if there's only a little thing that you're interested in. But all the material in the school, all the modules you'll be receiving have been specifically recorded for the school with students at the school. Basically, you'll see me or hear me coaching students through the materials, doing the demonstrations, doing the exercises, and giving them feedback on that, so that it's almost like it's the next best thing to having me right next to you, coaching you directly. But of course, you'll just see hearing or seeing me doing someone else. When I say hearing or seeing, it's mostly audio courses, except for the Ericksonian courses in years 2 and 3 and 4. Because Ericksonian courses require a little bit of visual acuity as well, we've done it visually. So you'll see the 2 students I'm coaching. You won't see me because you don't need to see me, but you will see our students so we can talk about their reactions. So you will have that there. Okay, Han, self-hypnosis course. Okay, so this is not related to this course, but I'll answer the question happily. Han's asking, in a self-hypnosis, which hand should you hold the pendulum in to prevent the conscious mind from interfering with the result? The answer is it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It works equally well with both hands. If you feel that one hand is somehow interfering with it, by all means use the other one. But it is completely irrelevant, in my experience, which hand you use. What really matters is that you focus all of your attention on the question and try and avoid focusing your attention on what answer you wish to have. You just keep your attention on the question and either blank your mind whilst the answer comes, or focus your mind entirely on the question. Don't let your mind wander outside of those parameters, and then you're more likely to get an accurate answer there. Absolutely, Menafi, I agree with you there. Okay, Armin, CHP training for certified trainer. Yep. Okay, so I mean, I think we just answered your question earlier on. We had the same question about the CHPH there, so hopefully let's answer it. Please feel free to post a follow-up if necessary. Nicholas. What's the difference between Ericksonian hypnosis and my style of conversation hypnosis? Oh my gosh, how much time have we got? So one thing you should know is in the school, we have an entire unit. The HSC, the Hypnotic Skill Coaching, level 2, is the 200 series. That's in other words years 3 and 4, is all Ericksonian hypnosis, right? Of course, my take on Ericksonian hypnosis. So what's that difference between that and my style of conversation hypnosis? Okay, so first of all, it's hard to say because it's hard to say what actual Ericksonian hypnosis is. Erickson did something different each time, and sometimes he did very direct hypnosis, so just keep that in mind. In terms of the principles, nothing. In terms of the background assumptions, nothing. In terms of how it looks from the outside, in terms of all the videos I've ever seen of Erickson doing stuff and all the descriptions I've heard of Erickson doing stuff, there is a significant difference, except for his information gathering. The one thing I never had enough information about is how does he spend 8 hours just getting a detailed life history from someone? What the heck does he do in those times? And how does he use that sometimes? Because sometimes he talks about 8 hours of taking a life history, then gives them a detailed summary of it, gives them a simple suggestion, and they're cured. How does that work? We don't have any examples of that. So my style of conversation hypnosis, compared to what most people now call Ericksonian hypnosis, is this. Ericksonian hypnosis is semi-overt. In other words, no one quite knows when the induction starts, but they know that something's happening, right? If you don't frame it as hypnosis, they still know something unusual is going on. I don't know what it is, but I can spot that it's happening right now. In my style of conversation hypnosis, they don't notice that. It just feels like an incredibly interesting, deep conversation where they have insights and spontaneous things occur that don't normally occur in other conversations. That's my best way of describing it. You will see, feel, and hear the difference in the applied conversation hypnosis course, especially when you get into the 3rd and 4th years, because then we really diverge. You will have the applied conversation hypnosis course going down fully my conversational hypnosis track. And simultaneously, you'll be getting the hypnosis skills coaching going fully down the Ericksonian track, which is a much more overt, weedy, mind-bending, trancey sort of thing. And you will see, hear, and feel both versions happening in tandem. And then that will give you the full answer. But the simple answer to it is my style of conversation hypnosis, I think, is much more covert. People won't know it's happening. But you will, and any other hypnotist that's trained with me will know exactly what's happening. And it just feels like a really powerful, intimate, inspiring, insightful, spontaneous conversation. That's the best way of describing that. Okay, James, is this all new training? Oh, we've talked about it already. Do you recommend watching Erickson's DVDs over and over? Ian, yes, I do. 100% I do. I did it, and I got a lot out of it. Just remember, first of all, with some of these seminars, it took me a long time to figure out what he was doing because it's very subtle, right? With some of the other stuff, like the Mondi tapes, again, it took me something like almost 6 months of watching the Mondi tapes before I could watch them all the way through. So I got a lot out of it. Even when I passed out halfway through, I got a lot out of it. And absolutely, I would recommend that. Nicholas, how do you build profound trust in your unconscious mind? No, I get the idea of not wanting to refer another course. Listen, here's a simple answer, right? You trust your experiences. In other words, you ask your unconscious for something and you get it. Let's say you forgot something, you say, unconscious mind, please remind me of it sometime. And then when it comes, don't just go, oh, well, I always get this anyways. Go, thank you, right? You need to acknowledge when your unconscious mind has done what you've asked it to do, right? Another way of doing it is meditate. Yes, I can talk about the personal mind training, absolutely. And by the way, if you want to have a taste of the personal mind training for free, join the school and you'll get the first, I think you get the first 14 sessions for free. You get the first 7 straight away as the material gets released. And after 2 weeks, you'll get another 7 as well. So you can try it out. But even if you don't want to do that, if you want to just have it free, there's tons of online resources. Just type in free meditation or guided meditations. The breathing meditation or the body scan meditation is really, really good because you're focusing in on yourself. But ultimately, the easiest way to get a profound trust of your unconscious is 1, internalize, study yourself, and 2, ask things of yourself. And when they happen, appreciate and acknowledge them. That builds an incredible amount of trust. How did Erickson do it? Well, he was in a wheelchair, paralyzed, which means he was kept falling asleep. We wake up by movement, right? When you've been sitting around for a long time, what do? We move around to wake ourselves up, to re-engage our brains. He couldn't do that. The only way he could prevent himself from falling asleep is to focus intensely on an idea. What did he intensely focus on? His own memories, right? And his own memories were so intense that they actually end up causing little movements in his body. He was surprised when he was when he spent, like, in the morning, he'd be like, I don't know, a few feet away from the window, and he'd look out the window and remember climbing the tree, and he'd try and remember it as much vivid details so he could have joy in it again, because he couldn't physically climb it, had to mentally climb it instead. He did it so intensely that maybe 5 hours passed, and we suddenly realized, the sun's starting to dip down again. He was now right next to the window. Somehow his rocking chair had moved from the middle of the room to the window. He didn't know how. Of course, we know how. His intense imagination of the memory triggered the motor response. So he rocked the chair forward, but because so engaged in what he was doing, he didn't notice it was rocking forward. He just moved the chair forward without realizing it. That level of intensity will build profound trust in your unconscious because you see it in action. There's no denying it anymore. Now, you don't have to go the way of Erickson. Lesser versions of that will do the job too, but you got to train your mind one way or another. Breathing meditation, body scan meditation, kindness, metta, blessings. Train your mind and you will trust it more. That's the easy answer to that one. Shilanda, I agree with you. Jan, in terms of the accreditation, I think we've already answered that. So feel free to if you want to volunteer to get accredited somewhere, I will absolutely support you in that process and make all the material available to the institution. But someone else has to do the legwork. We don't have the manpower for that at this point. How can I practice conversational hypnosis without fear? Well, Williams, I would say basically start with practicing. Well, there's 2 ways you can go with this. One is you need to get good at hypnosis, and 2, then you start doing conversation hypnosis. How did I do it? I did it with a language card, hypnotic language shortcut system. You can get most of it for free now on an app. Go to the iPhone or the App Store on iPhone or Android and look up hypnotic language shortcut system, and you should get most of the cards for free there. There's a premium part of it if you want to unlock some of the features, advanced features of it, but most of the cards will be available completely for free. So the way that I would use that is basically try and slip the language patterns into normal conversations, just one at a time. Initially, you'll be very much afraid. Well, not afraid. It'll be a little bit awkward. But if you do it with new people who don't know you, they won't know you're being awkward because they don't know what you normally talk like. Then as time goes by, you gradually can become more and more attuned, and you'll be naturally speaking in these ways anyways. And basically, as long as you're doing it with people who don't know you, they don't know you're speaking in different ways, and it becomes very, very simple to run with these language pattern cards. And over time, you can challenge yourself to do more and more cards at a time. So one of our instructors, actually, the way he started is he was a waiter at the time. He put one card in his pocket, and that's his card for the day. Every client he served, he'd use that language pattern in one way or another. He'd figure out a way of getting it in there. His co-workers, he tried with them as well, but because they knew how he spoke normally, it sounded a bit odd. But his clients the customers didn't care. They thought he was awesome. He's a really nice guy. He got so good at this at one point that he ended up winning. At one point, I think he got something like an $800 tip or $600 tip, a huge tip, just from being such an awesome guy that the guy really enjoyed himself there and just left a huge tip for him. So that's a simple way of practicing up conversational hypnosis without the fear. Another way is just ask a friend who's interested to practice with you until you're good enough that you're willing to take into normal conversations. That's another simple way of doing it. The tuition cost, Trish, after the initiation, I believe is $149 a month. Again, rock bottom price. The details should be in the offer you see there. That should actually walk you through it, I believe. If not, it's $149 a month, and that's for mentors, basically all access, no questions. You can go, you could be there all day, every day if you wanted to. So let me work my way through the questions here. Okay, Guillermo, how to lose the fear of leaving the normal job to become a full hypnotherapist? Okay, so that's a great question. Number one, what I did is I did it the hard way, which means I just quit. I used a ton of self-hypnosis because I had panic attacks every day, literally, and I used self-hypnosis to calm them, which is very good for me. That's how I learned to trust my unconscious, by calming my fear, and I had a lot of it. And quite rightly so, because I left very unprepared. My hypnosis skills weren't fully formed, and I had zero professional skills. I had no client acquisition strategies whatsoever. Bad idea, by the way. So what's the easier way of doing it? Number one, trust your hypnosis skills. In other words, work with lots of people until you know you can do the job. Number two, take on paying clients outside your job hours, weekends, evenings, that sort of time, right? Because once you have a number of paying clients that you don't necessarily have to replace your entire salary, but you have some income coming in, and more importantly, you have confidence that you know how to repeat what you did with those clients to get them. You can get more clients if you had more time. Then you can take a calculated risk and leave your normal day job. Now, if you don't know how to get clients, there's a number of resources. The cheapest way is go on Amazon and buy books on how to get clients, basically. There's a number of books out there. I think Michael Portilla has one on book Get Book Solid or something like that, I think is his book. Don't worry about his big courses. It's basically just repetition of the book. Get the book and you'll get the essence of the plan there, right? We have a hypnotherapy business method, a DVD set that goes through the same similar strategies, our strategies in much more details. Or ultimately, the one I think is the most valuable of them all is the professional skills coaching course. Gives you 4 years of systematic exercises and ideas that you can put into practice to organize yourself, organize your time, the way you present yourself, where you go to find clients, how you talk to those clients, everything. Everything that you need to succeed has been built into that. It's precisely to answer this question. So that is hands down the easiest way of succeeding with it. But if you want to succeed on your own, go and get yourself go to Amazon, get yourself a book, and educate yourself. That's a really big thing. Fear is often dissolved by knowing what to do to meet the problems you anticipate. Okay, tears. Just like forget something while they're in trance, but well aware of you saying, even in the trance, will this still work? In my experience, a critical factor because you find it doesn't work. So tears, you're quite right. You're creating a paradox. When you say to someone, forget this thing, you're putting more attention on this thing, and it tends to create more of a memory trace. Now, having said that, many people will still succeed. In other words, the more skilled trance subjects will do this literally and will forget what you've suggested they forget. So for the more skilled trance subject, a direct suggestion to forget a specific thing will work. But there is a paradox there. So what's my preference? There's 2 solutions. One solution is leave it up to the unconscious. Forget what you need to forget, remember what you need to remember, and just enjoy yourself. And then when they come back out of the trance, then you'll see what they remember, and you'll see what they forget. They'll forget large chunks of the session, and they'll remember some elements of the session, and that's perfect. That's a nice, simple way of doing it. The other way is to do structured amnesia. In other words, if you're familiar with the idea of nested loops, right? Nested loops, where the simplest way is not the only way, but the simplest way is you learn this on Ericksonian metaphors, is to tell 5 stories and never quite complete them, and then complete the stories in reverse order. Whatever was at the end of that 5th story will tend to be forgotten, right? It's to do with the Zeigarnik effect of memory. Again, there's not a place I can describe the whole thing. Look up Zeigarnik effect, Z-E-I-R-G, A-R-N-I-K, I believe it is, something like that, for the information, or nested loops is an NLP concept of that. We teach it in our Ericksonian metaphors. If you've got one of the old DVDs, it's in there. In the new DVDs, it's in there. And of course, it'll be in the school as well if you want the school version. Otherwise, look online for the idea of nested loops. There's people out there explaining the core concept on YouTube and on websites, so you can get the basic idea off the bat if you want to. Or, of course, if you join, we will cover that absolutely in due course. Self-hypnosis course, we figure about the power pendulum. Okay, we've done that one, Han. Yes, Mindad. Okay, so it seems like I'm going full circle again on some of these questions. Let me just keep going until I find a new one. If I'm practicing a hypnotist, I have to perform therapy. Will I be able to help a CPTSD victim? Okay, guys, this is a great question. Now, that depends. CPTSD is basically complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is basically a more complicated version of post-traumatic stress disorder, which used to be called shell shock. It's basically just another label psychologists gave this thing. So here's the answer: yes and no. What do I mean by this? Well, the technical skills as a hypnotist, you will have the technical competence to work with people who have CPTSD if you wanted to. But having the technical competence does not mean you have the legal authority. That wholly depends on where you practice. In other words, what the country laws are, and if your country is divided into states like the US is, or provinces like Canada is, then you've got to check both the federal laws and the local state laws on what you are allowed to or not allowed to practice as a hypnotist. For example, using the US. In Florida, you can do no hypnotherapy. You can only do hypno coaching. In other words, you can't look at any trauma. That's only as licensed psychologists can do that. Whereas, for example, in, I believe, New York State, you can't, for example, work with a phobia unless it's been referred to you by a psychologist. Again, those rules may have changed recently. This is going back 10 years when I last really thought about this or looked into this. So the short answer is, will you have the technical competency? Yes. Are you legally allowed to? That depends on where you are practicing. Inform yourself. Basically, talk to a local lawyer and find out, right? That's the easiest way of finding out. So Walt's asking the time commitments to succeed with the hypnotherapy university. Okay, so if you're on the 4-year program, so I would recommend you put in about, 5 hours a week minimum. What does that entail? 2 hours a week will be studying the materials, so the actual sessions that you're getting, right? Then another 2 hours, and then basically the other 3 hours will be practicing the materials you've learned. That's the simplest formula I can give you. 5 hours a week, that's basically an hour a day. 2 hours to actually go through the materials, or maybe 2.5 hours so you can take some notes and all that sort of stuff. And then the other 2.5 hours to actually practice the materials. That would be your baseline. Of course, the more time you put into it, the more successful you can be with it. The nice part is, because it's over 4 years, we can present the content in a consumable way, so that as long as you're plodding along and keeping up with the practice element, that you understand the lesson enough that you can practice the core elements of it, then you should be able to complete the program successfully. So if you have another question, please feel free to follow up on that. Okay, so we've already dealt with the amnesia question. Do you have any good trainers in Scandinavia? I'm afraid, Teresa, no, I don't have anyone in Scandinavia at this point. So the closest person to you will be in, we've got someone in Holland and someone in Germany, in Hamburg, I believe. So those will be the closest to you. from where you're at there. If you're interested in those, email us and we'll let you know where our trainers are. Or I'll just give you the names quickly. Carsten Küstner is in Germany, and Martin Groenendaal, I've completely messed up the pronunciation, of course, is in Holland, in the Netherlands. Okay, moving through. Jan's asking if I'll be back in the UK at some point. I'm sure I will. I don't know when. It probably won't be this year. We've got a lot of internal stuff still to sort out, so I can't give you a timeline. But I'm not going anywhere, nor is the UK. Jerry's asking if there's an NLP component, is there a live component? So to answer the question, number one, NLP, nope, you're not using NLP in the school, not at this level. We may do an extension at some point to focus on NLP, but we'll be focusing just on our own internal material and Ericksonian hypnosis. Is there a live component? The answer is for every other course that you take, for at least for the Ericksonian courses, the 2, and the CHPH, the level 1 hypnosis, there is a live version of that it's worth you taking. And we are negotiating currently with our trainers special discounts that our students can receive to be able to go to those trainings at a discount. But they're not rolled into your school fees. We specifically separated those fees out. As actually, the senior students had the seminar fees rolled into their price, but they paid a much higher price. We try to make the school as affordable as possible by stripping out all the things we can strip out to make it as affordable as possible. And that means no live seminars are included in the fees, because that just jacks up the price massively for us. But we have, in return, we are in the middle of negotiating with our trainers special discounts. We get zero out of that ourselves. There's no money comes our way for that. This is purely to make life easier for you guys. And basically we'll send them, you go to them, you get a big discount, and as a result, they have a slightly full training. That's kind of how we're going to work it. Thank you, Shalanda. You are very, very kind. Thank you, Manifi, again. That's very kind. Okay, Nicholas, you should... so I will, you know what, if our support doesn't know we have a trial offer, then you're absolutely right. Let me just copy your comments straight into our IT guys. And we'll handle it in our back end. So thank you for that, Nicholas. I appreciate that. Community, is there a student discount for diploma school? Okay, so there is, unfortunately, Nicholas, there's no extra discount to join the diploma school. We have made it as cheap as we possibly can. We have literally stripped out every aspect we can, and we've made it universities cheap, because there's people on income support that want to be able to join, as well as students, of course, as well. So this is about as cheap as we can make it at this point. It's possible that you can accept us on the Facebook group. I'll have to check in with our IT guys, but I think the Facebook group is really for, well, we have a Facebook group already for the HTA. You can join that for free anyways. I don't know if we have a Facebook group for the Hypnotherapy University, so I'll have to check with the IT guys if that even exists. If you join the free program, you get full access, like every student, so you'd be on the Facebook group as well. But beyond that, I'd have to check if we do have a Facebook group. If one of the current students knows, please let me know. We didn't have one for the longest time, but that may have changed in the last few weeks or the last few months, and I may not find out about it, so I can't really answer that question directly. But certainly about the trial offer, I'll make sure that our support team knows about that, so you don't have any issues with that. Okay. Best technique principle for learning quick conversation hypnosis. All right. 2 tools. Tool number 1, hypnotic language. Wherever you find it, learn hypnotic language, learn to speak in hypnotic language. That's the first tip. Second tip, hypnotic rapport. Learn to get into deep conversations with people. Then your hypnotic language will have a disproportionately strong impact. So those are the 2 cents worth. Number 1, deep rapport sets the hypnotic context for you. Number 2, hypnotic language lets you steer their attention hypnotically within that once you have that. So hopefully that's the easiest, a nice, quick, easy way of remembering that. Okay, Trish, Trish has a question. I've trained 400 hours, opening in practice. Congratulations, Trish, you're opening your practice. That's wonderful. You want experience of the daily meditation. or additional training experience, as well as the additional training experience. What are we going to make 2 to 3 o'clock time slot? And obviously this do your comprehensive course track. Please, thank you. Okay, so Trisha's question is, first of all, congratulations on starting your own practice. I'm very excited for you. So if you can't make the practice group between 2 and 3 o'clock, no problem, right? There is a number of other informal practice groups. In other words, students will be running their own versions in all hours of the day. The earliest starts at 4 a.m. Eastern time. Currently, the latest is at 5 p.m. Eastern time, but that will change as other students open up different avenues, different time zones there. So you can also you can go to those informal practice groups and ask the students there, especially those with the senior students. So there are some informal practice groups that are run by senior students who are on the verge of graduating or have already graduated, by the way. So by the way, just a little time aside, the support is about to find out about the free trial, so you should be good on that within the hour. Okay, back to Trish again. So even if you can't make the 2 to 3 o'clock time slot, come to the informal practice groups. You won't have an instructor necessarily present there. However, you can still ask your fellow students questions, and if they don't have the answer, they can still come to me and the other instructors and get an answer back to you. And don't forget, a number of those practice groups are being run by senior students who've either already graduated or on the verge of graduating, so they're going to have a ton of answers for you as well if you need them. Thirdly, there is an extra unadvertised bonus. I'll tell you about it now. Normally, you find out about it once you get into school. Once a month, I run a mentor development call. So for 2 hours on a Sunday morning, today I just did one before this call. You get to talk with me live from 10 a.m. till 12 noon Eastern time, and ask any questions you want there as well. That is not a practice call. That is purely to ask questions so I can help you resolve understandings of the material, help you build up your leadership, and so on. So it's another chance to interact with me. And of course, you can practice 24/7. Just make an appointment with a student. And as long as you've got someone to be there at the same time as you, you'll be able to practice, right? As for the fast track, you're quite correct. The amount either doubles. There's a number of different payment options you have. Some people like to prepay the entire school in one go. Some people just double up the payments so they can go on the fast track. But yes, absolutely, that's exactly how it works. Hopefully that answers your question. Add another question if you have a follow-up. All right, let's keep going here. If it's a fair question, Adrian's asking, how does Igor's program compare with rapid transformation therapy of Marissa Peer? So unfortunately, Adrian, I do not know. I know Marissa Peer, or at least of Marissa Peer. I have no idea of what her protocol is like. So hopefully someone else who's here right now will be able to answer your question if they have experience of that. I don't know it, so I can't answer your question, unfortunately. When will you run a course in Australia? Clara, right now we're looking at our schedule for the next year. I don't know if Australia's on the cards or not, so I can't give you a precise answer because we don't know. We're still trying to figure out our schedule for Europe and the US for this year. And that may actually include another Australia run because we haven't been there in a little while. But that's going to be a logistical issue if we can actually get enough instructor time to hire the instructors to go out there and do that. So there's no guarantee it'll be this year, but it is on our radar. But it's now overdue that we go back to Australia at some point. So Ian's asking, does conversational hypnosis work or MBL work on helping teenagers' behavioral problems to calm down? Absolutely. Here's the easiest solution for that. Deep hypnotic rapport. Why? Teenagers with behavioral problems, basically what they're saying is they're having problems organizing their mind in some ways, right? So instead of thinking about it in terms of, I'm going to do some suggestions on you so you can calm down, is actually the better way of looking at it is, I'm going to develop a relationship with you so that you don't feel skittish around me, but you feel safe enough to be calm around me. That's a much more powerful frame to come from. And applied conversation hypnosis and hypnotic rapport absolutely hit the nail on the head for that. You don't have to join a school to learn that. As I said, we're going to be teaching the hypnotic rapport portion of that as a separate card deck to help you practice that. That, I think, would be a deeply healing way of bonding with a teenager to get that. But you'll have your work cut out. Why? Because if they're already having behavioral issues, they're going to have a lot of defenses up before you can get into that conversation with them. So you're going to have to practice deep rapport with other people first, easier people, because this example is a much more difficult example. Without hypnotic rapport, it's really difficult to work with someone who has behavioral problems. The skill becomes in how quickly can you develop that kind of rapport with someone who has behavioral problems. The quicker you can do it, the quicker it's possible to calm them down with just a few simple suggestions. So hopefully that's helped you there a bit. So what is the personal mind training we just spoke about? Is it a product? It's going to become it's a 2-year daily hypnotic meditation. So I do a guided meditation each day. It's a brand new one each day. They go in themes. So I believe there is 6 or 7 different levels. Each one has a different core theme, a different core concept. And that's even broken down into systematic steps that have different variations of the exercise to give you a very rounded version of that. And I've recorded every single one. I've given you the neuroscience behind the exercise, what part of your brain is training, why it's training it, what it's doing for you. And then I guide you through it with, the preparation, what to focus on, what to think, how to do the exercise, the whole works. So it is a product. It's going to be something you can join on its own at some point. We're going to launch it as its own standalone thing. But for people in the school, we've already opened the doors to that one. It's spread out over 4 years rather than the usual 2, just to match the time scale of the school. And that's a special bonus. It's just thrown in because it's such a powerful, valuable program that I wanted all my hypnotherapists to be able to have access to that. So hopefully that helps you there. And it's all based on research. I'll give you some of the examples of the research. Like, for example, certain ways of appreciating and showing gratitude gets your brain to develop oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone, which helps you have more satisfying, healthy relationships and makes you more pro-social. In other words, it's kind of kicks in your natural ethics, if you will. That's a simple, quick example of the kind of things I mean. And I've created a whole bunch of exercises around generating the best impact for that. So hopefully that gives you a sense of what I'm talking about here. Okay. Can you talk about stealth hypnosis? I think I just did, Joao. If you have a specific question, please feel free to ask it. But I think I've already talked about it as a more general version. That's really what applied conversation hypnosis does. It's stealth hypnosis, COVID hypnosis, whatever you want to call it. Applied conversation hypnosis is doing that. And I've given you the core elements of it. Hypnotic rapport lies at the heart of that. Okay, thank you. Okay, Romeo has a question. Igor, you spoke of personal mind trainings and meditation that came in late. Is it a product or part of no school? Okay, Romeo, so I think I just answered that. There's nothing more important than the process and the activity of your unconscious. Oh, Menifee, nice chance, thank you. You almost got me with that one. But I'll see if I can answer some more questions before we finish up here. What is commitment necessary for the program? Walter, I think we answered this already. I recommend minimum 5 hours a week. If you can't do 5 hours a week, 1 hour a day, or even 7 hours a day, we can better. But if you can't even do 1 hour a day, then you won't get the full benefit. You might get the information, but you've got to practice. You've got to put it into practice too. So I recommend you put 5 hours a week into it, which is basically 1 hour a day, Monday through Friday, and you've got a good shot of succeeding with this. Everyone's different. Some people need more practice. Some people need less. Rule of thumb, the more you practice, the better you'll become. So you'll get out what you put in, basically. Can John Odif associate? Can and should I use hypnosis on people on the autism spectrum or schizophrenic? Okay, Stefan, this is a great question. First of all, it depends on what you're trying to do with people who are on the autistic spectrum or have schizophrenia. First of all, myth. It's a myth that hypnosis can trigger a schizophrenic episode or a epileptic fit. With schizophrenics, oh gosh, how do we do this? So here's the problem with schizophrenics. It's not so much that they can't go into trance. It's that they will reinterpret your suggestions in accordance with whatever schizophrenic ideations they tend to have. Hence, it's a lot more tricky to work with them, right? As a rule of thumb, you may need to, you probably want to check with your local laws whether you're allowed to. In some countries, it becomes a medical issue. In other countries, it's okay as long as you proceed with caution. Autism tends to be a little bit different. Autism is a little more difficult to get through to those people. But here's the thing. I've had a number of students who are in the autism spectrum range, like high functioning autists and so on, and they've done incredibly well and love the trances. And of course, others with autism spectrum, you've got to take into consideration what limitations their thinking has, right? So you don't want to trigger a fear response that then goes into a fit and all the rest of it. So can you use hypnosis with them? Yes. Should you use it with them? It depends on the person and how they present that particular issue on the one side. And on the other side, it also depends on the local laws. If there is a specific a limitation on who can work, in this case, with schizophrenics, then you need to abide by that. With autism, I am not aware of anything that prevents you to work with them in terms of as a medical condition. So if in doubt, just check it out anyways. But in most countries, you should be okay to work with them, provided it's not on the autistic elements themselves. You're just helping them, like any other person, to study better and live a better life and so on. So, but ultimately, check your local laws, because I'm not a lawyer anymore. So I can't give you legal advice, even in England, because I'm no longer on the Law Society rolls in England. So I'm not allowed to give legal advice. You've got to check out the local laws as they currently stand. So yes, Dave is correct. The mind training is a separate program that you can get on its own, but we've included it as a bonus to the school because it's so important for the school, I think. Okay. Thank you, Melosil. I'm just working through our comments here and questions. Okay, Tears is another question here, looks like. I performed an induction of a friend with a voice muscle spasm. In this induction, I had the voice muscles wax coming out of the trance. This seemed to work for about 20 minutes. I had so much doubt that this would stay like this. I didn't stay there. Go ahead. Do you have any thoughts and advice? Okay, Tiz. So first of all, that's a big question. So I'm going to try and give you a big summary on how to deal with this quickly. But this is a bigger issue. This is generally a skill issue, right? So number one, congratulations. You did a good job and it worked. Fantastic. The fact that it was working for 20 minutes means it worked. Period. Full stop. It worked. Now the only question is, how long can you maintain it? Now, if they had so much doubt, the problem is, and this is an old principle in hypnosis, a pre-existing suggestion will tend to trump new ones, and unless they are extinguished in some ways. So you've got to extinguish the doubt. Now, how do you extinguish doubt? There's a number of ways of doing it. In the classical sense, in classical hypnosis, the simplest way of doing it is convincers. Give them convincer after convincer after convincer after convincer after convincer, then do the therapy. Doubts tend to be evaporated by then. That's the fast, simple bullet approach to doing it. The opposite approach, or the other approach, which is actually my preference, believe it or not, is the conversational approach, which is basically solved by deep hypnotic rapport. When you have enough deep hypnotic rapport, people forget to doubt it. It's weird. The very same thing you could do at 2 o'clock and get a big problem, you do it at 3 o'clock, it's zero resistance because you spent the last hour building a deep hypnotic rapport. That is the simplest way of dealing with it. Other than that, you can go for the classical approach as well, which means you do lots of convincer, arm stick, eye lock, body sway. These are the classic ones. And once they've had enough, each person has a different volume. Someone is convinced after 1, someone needs 5, some might need a special one which just blows their mind. But once their mind is blown, then the therapy that you do afterwards will tend to stick much longer because doubts will tend to evaporate. That's the simple answer to a very complex question otherwise. I hope that works. Dave, Ego is saying we need to spend more time in self-hypnosis. Dave, yes. Well, it depends. If you're already spending half your day in self-hypnosis, you're good to go. But I would personally recommend you make a point of spending at least 15 to 20 minutes a day in self-hypnosis every day. Do some kind of practice in self-hypnosis. It is incredibly valuable to you and worth every second you put into that. So yes, I would say that absolutely. Menifee has a question. I was from the old school regression to cause, reframing emotional context, etc. Lately, I've been using contextual therapy, which allows the past to be past and deal with present difficulties. I want to ask, would you recommend? trust your judgment. So here's the answer, Manifi. Doesn't matter. They both get the job done. It's simple as that, right? First thing about the regression to cause, the initial sensitizing event, you never know whether that event ever happened. There's false memory. If it did happen, whether it happened like they remember because of false memories, and if it did happen as they remember it, whether that's actually the initial sensitizing event or something happened before that even earlier. You will never know. There's no way to actually know unless you have someone who's tracked their entire life with a video camera and you can review it to check, right? So at the very simplest level, regression therapy works as a symbolic release of past problems. How do we know this? Because past life therapies, which although there is room for the possibility that you go to a genuine past life at times, most people who follow the past life therapy protocols go to a fantasy regression. It's just a fantasy. It's a symbolic journey, if you will. And I think that at the very least, a regression therapy is a symbolic journey, and the initial sensitizing event is a symbol of the problem. You resolve the symbol, you resolve the problem. It works beautifully. Now, as you're staying in the present, as opposed to going to the past, again, works fantastically. That's where I normally go to as well. Which do I recommend? Doesn't matter. Do what does the job. When we teach level 1 hypnosis, we teach both non-awareness set, dynamic mental imagery, and mind-bending language all keep you in the present moment, right? Revivification, regression therapy, all send you back into the past. Both work, and all those and a few more devices are in that training course precisely because it gives you options. So don't get worried about one approach or another. Do what the client needs and what the client responds to. If you start off, the way I would start off normally is I start off in the contextual therapy style, in the moment hypnosis. And if they keep going back into the past, I'll go, sure, that's where the energy is going. So I'll just hijack it, do a regression therapy, clean it up, and move on. It's just a lot easier that way for me. You don't have to. You can do it all future-oriented, present-oriented, or past-oriented. Either way, all those therapies work. There's no better. There's just what works better for you and that client. As your skill improves, as your understanding improves, so your selection process should improve. In the meantime, it's good to have some selection there. Adrian, I'm impressed with how much you have given. Well, thank you, Adrian. I appreciate that. Well, thank you, Adrian. I appreciate that. There was a question, but it's even nicer. Tears of permanent depression explains with voice spasm. I think we've answered that one already. Dave. Oh, actually, I think that's a repeat. Lloyd says I can work with substance abusers that have years of trauma. Gary, you be very careful about what that lawyer said, because I'm not sure that's correct. Substance abuse is technically, in most countries, should be something that's covered by a special a clause. And the other thing I would say is also substance abuse includes medical issues, because some substances can be dangerous to go cold turkey on. For example, alcoholics have such a chemical dependency that if someone is too far gone in alcoholism, then removing alcohol cold turkey can kill the person from the withdrawal symptoms. It's incredibly dangerous for some people. So I would strongly advise, even if what your lawyer in your country says is correct and you can work with substance abuse with no extra thing, I would strongly advise you to work within to at least get more training specifically for that area, because you want to be very, very, very aware of the dangers, like, for example, with alcoholism, that in extreme cases is a chemical dependency that the withdrawal symptoms can kill a person if not handled well. Even in alcohol abuse centers, by the way, people still die from alcohol withdrawal. So it's a really serious thing, and be very cautious about doing that. As for the trauma part, again, you're going to work with the law, but the tools you learn here as a hypnotist can absolutely help with that side of things. But again, work very carefully within the scope of the laws and the ethics there. Armin, thank you so much for that. Keep an eye on the inbox, and we'll happily let you know when our other webinars are coming out. So thanks for that. Thank you, Manifi. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Trish, for that. I appreciate that as well. David, thank you, David, for that. Thank you. I really appreciate that, David. Romeo, on my self-hypnosis sessions, I have trouble with negative suggestions and thoughts actually taking effect. I find all this, your unconscious will only act on positive suggestion spiel, not fully be true. I'm afraid to fully let go and self-hypnosis. Okay, so you're saying that basically if you give yourself a negative suggestion like you will not do this any further, it doesn't quite work out for you. That can be true. You're 100% right. It's called, the problem with that is passing. And it's accentuated by mindset, believe it or not. So what is the essence of hypnosis, self-hypnosis? You are sending a message, a meaning to someone else. Now, the more the meaning is couched in negative terms, like you will not smoke, you will not feel fear, right? The more it can trigger an association, in this case, the word fear. And then if you're already susceptible to fear, it can trigger the feeling of fear in you. And you're 100% right. There is such a thing as negative hypnosis, evil hypnosis, nocebo, right? So we can look at hypnosis as an enhanced placebo on the healthy side, or an enhanced nocebo on the unhealthy side. Nocebo meaning I will harm, placebo meaning I will please. So you're quite right. If you are finding yourself being harmed by the negative phrasing of suggestions, avoid it. Think always in the terms of, like, you don't even have to use language. You can actually just use visualizations in terms of what you want the outcome to be. Here's a really simple example of what I mean. Close your eyes, everyone who's still here, and just picture your own face. Whatever expression your face has, now change the expression to a smile, a really beautiful, beaming, bright smile. And the more you look at that smile, you'll know you're getting this right, because eventually, usually happens within 5 or 10 seconds with most people, you'll want to smile yourself. Your own face lights up. Let it happen. That is a self-suggestion, instantly done. No big trance required, no big hoo-ha required. You've just succeeded with self-suggestions in seconds, right? So if you're finding negative experiences coming up in your self-suggestion, change the protocol until you're getting the results you want. This is a good example of which way to go, Romeo. I hope that's helped you a little bit there. Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate that. Ego is right about alcohol withdrawal, known as, yes. Thank you, David. Thank you, Teresa. I'm glad you enjoyed that. Good. Okay, guys. I think it looks like we're coming towards the end of today, and there's no more questions coming up. There's a few more comments popping in. So last chance, folks. You've got me here. If you've got a question, throw it out now. Otherwise, I'll assume you've got everything you want. Remember, the link is still live. It'll be live for a little bit longer, and then we'll take it down once we've got our numbers in. It's absolutely 100% free. When I say free, of course, it'll be $1 just to check your age for us. It's the easiest way of checking age without getting into complications. So just the $1. You can get your dollar back if you decide that school's not for you. If you really want it back, just ask for it. We'll make sure you get it. But take advantage of it now. I want you to experience it. This is such an amazing environment. I love the school. I love the people in the school. I love what they're doing with the school. I love the graduates are doing. They're just impressive people. And I'd love you to be part of that as well. So try it out. It's completely free of charge. If you decide to stick around, it's as cheap as we can make it, $149 a month. It is incredibly cheap for that, for what you're getting from it. Tiers, live trainings in LA. I don't know where we're doing our live trainings right now. We're currently designing a seminar schedule for the year. So we'll have to keep you posted once we know more. So I can't give you a full example of that. But again, for everyone else, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking part. And if you haven't done so already, go ahead and click on the link. Read about the offer, the free trial, or the $1 trial, which you can get refunded if you want as well. Try it out for yourself, because I can speak here I've been here almost 3 hours talking about this stuff, and I can speak another 3 hours, and none of that will mean anything as anywhere near as much. It's just trying it out for yourself. We've done our part. We've built the technology. We've got an amazing group of people. We've got amazing instructors. We've paid for them to be there, to serve you. So please just try them out, because you never know. This could be the one thing that just gives you the things you want in your life, the quality level, the experience levels, the strength, an amazing community, and it's free to try out, at least, right? If you don't like it, you lost nothing, absolutely nothing. You'll know it's not for you at this point. If it's not for you right now, you'll know maybe in 2 years. Now is the time for you, because now you know what it is. So please do try it out. We try to make it as easy for you as possible. If you stick around afterwards, we made it as affordable as possible. So use it, guys. All right. So thank you, everyone. Let me just check with IT team. When does registration expire? I'm just checking right now on your question, by the way. I don't know the technical answer because the marketing team is in charge of all that sort of stuff. So I'm just checking if they can get back to me in time. Let's just see if anyone else has a question whilst I try and get your answer for you there. And in the meantime, I'll catch up on the questions I missed out. Gary, I have no current visa status in the US. I've got to get a brand new visa for that too. So same deal as in Canada, except I haven't gone through the proceedings yet. So that might be something we might start looking at soon. Thank you again, appreciate that. And Teresa, thank you as well. Menifee, thank you. Thank you, I really appreciate the comment there, Menifee. Peter, thank you. And Tiz as well. Lucas, I'm still waiting to get your answer. I'll see if I can get it before we finish up today, but it should be good for a little while still. Mac Menifee, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you in 6 months as well when you finish with that. We will. I will get our marketing. I'll make sure that I'll talk to them again. Make sure that they inform everyone about live seminars when we've got the schedule. We just don't have anything there at the moment, so there's nothing to report on just yet, unfortunately. Keep you posted, of course, Ian. Thanks, Mark. I look forward to seeing you in the school, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks, Ian, as well. Jonathan, of course, is already in the school. Nancy, thank you. Thank you, Annie and Stefan. So hoch bin ich nicht, aber danke sehr, Stefan. Romeo, self-hypnosis, what I meant is going into deep self-hypnotic suggested trance, then those other suggestion thoughts take effect as well. You're 100% right, Romeo. Negative thoughts will affect you in self-hypnosis, and that's how a lot of people screw themselves up. It's just how the mind works. You're 100% correct. So I'm afraid of going to a real deep trance and fully, truly understanding the process. Okay, I get the answer, the question you're asking here. How can I train myself to only have positive ones? So don't worry about depth of trance, Romeo. Ignore depth of trance. It is completely irrelevant for what you are doing. What you want to do is train. Think of your brain like freshly powdered snow, right? And when you drop a ball in that snow, it can go in any direction down this mountain. Now, the more you carve a channel down that mountain, the more the rain or precipitation will go down that channel, and only that channel. That's called mind training. Train your mind to think in certain ways. How do you do this? Well, you focus on what you want over and over and over again. So the simplest way of doing it, well, with the inner smile, which we did a moment ago, right? That is a training method. You do that 10 times a day, and you will start naturally doing that more often, and then you'll start smiling more often. What's another way of doing it? This is the Coué method of self-hypnosis. It requires zero depth of trance. It just requires conviction around the suggestions you give yourself. So here's a simple method for doing that. Give yourself simple suggestions. For example, every day I get happier, right? Simple as that. Now, you say every day I get happier, form the mental image like you did a moment ago with your smiling face. And now the image matches the words, and that tends to match the feelings. It's more work, yes, but you're meticulously, slowly carving out healthy challenge in your mind. The more you practice just healthy channels, just healthy thoughts, the more naturally you will default towards them, and the less likely you are to go into negative ideas. And then the idea of death will be irrelevant. You'll actually fall into death by accident because you're enjoying yourself so much. That's the much healthier way of doing it. Depth of trance is of zero consequence in self-hypnosis. What's more important is conviction, right? Conviction and repetition will do more for you than depth of trance. And if you're having problems with deeper trances because you don't want to actualize less healthy mental mindsets, then start off with the light stuff and use sheer repetition to ingrain your brain with healthy pathways. Well, those, of course, have to be up to you. But I get what you're talking about here, and I agree with you. Hypnosis can be a double-edged sword if you don't have full control of your thoughts at this point. But that's just a thought away, right? When a negative thought comes, don't wrestle with it. Just put your attention on a different thought, a healthier thought, and then make that your practice. One of the ways I do it is I just do a counter. I just count, 50 suggestions that are positive, and I make sure I don't count the next suggestion until I'm 100% sure the previous one was nice, healthy, and I was happy with it. So I hope that helps you there, Romeo. Thank you, everyone. Let me just see if I've got an answer yet. Nope, our IT teams haven't come back to me yet. Menifee, I agree with you. Kua was the man. So, okay, guys, I think that takes care of everything. Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate that. So have yourself a wonderful day, everyone. The link should be going for a bit longer. I can't guarantee you how long it is just because I don't know. I haven't managed to get anyone from the IT group to respond to me. So I've been delaying a little bit to try and get that. But so yes, have yourself a wonderful day, guys, wherever you're at, morning, evening, afternoon. Thank you for spending some time with me. Thank you for giving us a go here. And for those of you who signed up, I look forward to seeing you on the other side. Please have fun. Dive in, use the stuff. Just know if you've joined now, you're gonna have a week of preliminaries. There's gonna be no content for the first week whilst you kind of sort out, go to your orientation calls and stuff to get used to the schools and the system. Saturday morning, you will get your first set of content. So this Saturday, look out in the school for your first set of content, and that's when you'll get the stuff. And everyone, I hope you've enjoyed yourself. Thank you very much for coming here, and thank you for all your well wishes and your kind words. And for those of you who are coming to join us, I will look forward to seeing you in the school. And thank you again, Thomas. Yes, I remember the old table knocking from a disastrous seminar I just did, but that was a long, long time ago. And anyways, it was still appreciated that they did their version of clapping. So thanks for that, Thomas. Okay, yes. So everyone, have a wonderful day. Thank you very much. See you in the school. And the link should be open for a little bit longer. I can't say how long. I just haven't got an answer back from our IT/marketing team. But it should be good for a little while longer. And thank you for spending some time with me. See you next time, everyone. Bye-bye for now.